Hello and welcome to Flix and Chill with me, Luke. And today I have a very special guest, and it's the one, the only Alice-Ginevra Micheli with me. So please take it away.
Oh, hello, everyone. Lovely to meet you. G'day, I should say. And should I just launch into a little bit about me, Luke?
Yes, please, if you could just introduce yourself, give us as much
Yep.
or as little as you want about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, as Luke mentioned, my name's Alice. I We are both writers for sifpop.com, but during my daytime, I am a content producer for a uni here in Australia, University of Melbourne. I have been obsessed with film and all things pop culture. Probably, I didn't realize that I was a cinephile actually until much later than many people would think, because I have been watching and consuming pop culture very regularly since I was like 4 or 5 years old. But I never attributed that as like my main passion. I always connected it to other things. And it wasn't until year 11, so when I was about 16, 17, where I was like, hang on, all the things I think I want to do is because I saw them in film and TV. And then I realized that's really where my passion lies. So, yeah, I've worked across lots of different kinds of projects, from TV to film, and now I'm, like I said, in a bit of more of a cushy role, which I'm enjoying. And yeah, I am a what else is there to say about me? I live in Melbourne, Australia, which is the other major city than Sydney. I would
Mhm.
say it's much better than Sydney, but I'll get into
Nice.
that in a moment. And I live here with my partner, Toby, who is not a cinephile in any way, shape, or form. So that's always fun. But as well as my two dogs. So I have a toy poodle and a Airedale called Simba and Scotch.
Mhm.
And yeah, when I'm not consuming pop culture, I like to read, as I feel many of us do, because it's
Mhm.
still a form of escapism and storytelling. And right now, I am planning my very, very first trip to America, which is very exciting because I've never been before, and I'll be going in October. But yeah,
Oh,
I think
nice.
that's like everything I can think about me.
Mhm.
Oh, I also should mention, yes, I am also Italian. So I was born in Italy, moved here when I was 7. And so also obviously love cooking and all things food.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's everything I can think of.
See, just out of the bat, two things that come to mind. First, where are you going to, to America? Like, so in October, what states are you planning to visit?
Well, we're basically so fun little context for you here. So I have, grew up, obviously, like many of us see a lot of American media, and I was
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna move to New York and do all of that, blah blah blah. And then
same.
as I got older, I was like, I enjoy not having to pay for healthcare and all of that. So that went away, and I also really really love Melbourne as a city and everything about it, and I can still do everything I wanted to do.
Hmm.
But obviously I've always wanted to go, and I recently had a conversation with my partner Toby, and he was like, I will never go to America. I have absolutely no interest. He's like ethically against America for many reasons that we could get into. And so I was like, I messaged my best friend, and she's been many times. And I was like, would you go to America with me on a trip? And so now it's become this thing where my best friend and my other really good friend and I we're gonna go all together. And we're going across the entire country pretty much. So we're starting in Boston.
Hmm.
Well, actually, technically, we're starting in Salem, but we're flying into Boston and then going to Salem. And then we're going to go Salem, Boston. Then we're going to go New York, Washington, D.C. We're going to go to Florida, but we're not going to Florida. We're going to Disney World.
Yes, yes,
So we're going like straight from the airport to Disney World, staying there for a few days, going to Harry Potter Wizarding World, and
of
it's going to be
course.
really interesting because we're going to be there during the election. So hopefully,
Oh
I know it's
yeah.
like being in the South and in Florida during the election is going to be quite interesting, and also I'm a bit worried, but hopefully it's okay. And then from there, I'm actually going to go visit Aaron and Andrew from Sif Pop in Missouri. So I'm going to go there for a few days, and I'll probably see like hopefully a few more Sif Pop. I'm hoping to see some friends of ours from Sif Pop while I'm
Mm.
there anyway, because I'll be like, I never come here. Australia is so far away from everything, so this is like a big deal. And then oh, and actually, I totally forgot that before I go to Missouri, I'll be also going to Nashville, New Orleans. And then after Missouri, we're going to San Francisco and finishing in LA. So it's a huge 4-week trip, basically, where we're trying to cover as much as possible.
I was gonna say that sounds like a proper road trip. That just
Mm.
sounds so
Yeah.
great. Also, I'm not quite sure, you mentioned Florida, you mentioned presidential elections. Why would it be like, do you think it's going to be so charged up? Like, I cannot think of single reason why it would be so charged up there just, over that time. I think everything's going to be just fine.
Yes,
So,
of course. No
just
issues whatsoever, especially
no.
this particular election.
Yeah.
Especially my mom, when I told her, she was like, "Oh, wait, what? What? No, you're not. That's terrible." And I'm like, first of all, I think it should be okay because I think the really bad stuff will happen during the change. If there is, it'll be
Mm-hmm.
during the changeover if there is one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's January. So we'll be
Yes.
long gone by then. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think much happens during the actual election. And as long as we're going to be in Disney World.
Yeah.
Like, what could possibly happen to us in Disney World? What I am actually secretly hoping is that because it's the election day, maybe not a lot of Americans will come to Disney World. And so it'll just be like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, us foreign tourists, which is not to say like, oh, yeah, the Americans aren't going to be there. I just think that might mean less people are in the park. And so
Yeah.
we could do more, which because I know it's notoriously quite busy. So I guess that's the only thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. But like I said, my actual theory is that we'll be fine because if anything were to happen, it'll be a January thing. And I'll be safe back in Australia where we don't have weapons at our disposal.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna ask, so you're going to Florida. Do you
Mhm.
know what kind of Florida man you are? If does that sentence mean anything to you?
I feel like I've heard of that, but I'm not. No, oh, is this the like how it's like Florida man wrestles alligator and blah blah
Yes.
blah, and it's like yeah. It's always like a Florida man
So what do you
newspaper
do?
article.
Yes. So
Yep.
what you do is you go to, and you don't have to do it now. It
Yeah.
just happens, that I remember that old meme. So what do? You go to Google and you type in Florida man and date of your birth. So let's say, I don't know, like I
Okay.
was born August 14th. So I would say Florida man
Yep.
August 14th. And then you would see maybe like even two or three articles. And yeah, Florida man, like, walks his pet alligator into a store and robs it, and then
Yep.
on meth.
I just found mine.
Oh, tell me.
This is the first one that popped up. Is it meant to be the year you were born or just the first one that pops up on the day you were born?
I would say the date, like, date and month. Like, that's
Okay.
usually.
Well, because this is 2019, but it is
Okay.
quite alarming. It is Florida man arrested for having sex with stuffed Olaf at Target. Oh my God. There are so many questions.
This is a great game.
Wow. Wow. This is, yeah, that is actually a hilarious game. I'm gonna make all my friends do it now.
It
Oh
used to
God.
be,
Why is it disparaging? I was just talking about Disney World too.
I know, right?
No.
No, this used to be quite a big thing like 3 years ago.
Mm.
See, time has no meaning after COVID. So
I was
I think
gonna
it was
say, yeah.
before COVID, if like just maybe 2019. Like, I don't know.
Mm.
I can't remember. But just, yeah, Florida man. So be aware of the Florida man when you're in Florida. Just,
I mean, like I said, we'll only be dealing with Disney adults, which I can handle. I can definitely handle Disney adults. It's
but those can
just
be scary too. Those
they
can
can
be
be. It's not even Disney adults, it's the mums. I'm worried about the mums,
uh
but I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gonna clap back at any mum that tries to like get me to let her kid in. I'll be like, I have waited way longer than your 5-year-old child has waited for anything.
mhm.
It this is my time. I'm also very excited because me and my friend were going to make lightsabers while we're there, and it's going to be
Yes.
like a whole thing. Except then we realized they don't, because they're that it's like if you're going to own a lightsaber in life, it's you should make it there. And the issue is because it's so nice quality, they don't like they don't go down. They are full size at all
Yeah.
times. And so we're gonna have to carry it around with us for the rest of the trip. And so hopefully airlines don't mind that we are carrying. It comes with a carry case, but hopefully the airlines don't mind that we just got this like long baton thing
Mhm.
with us at all times.
I would say that's a small price to pay for owning a lightsaber. It's pretty cool.
As well as the large price I'll be paying to actually own the
To,
lightsaber.
to Disney, yes, to Disney.
Yeah.
And my other question, I've noticed something I want to point out. I love how you moved from Italy, a land of, how do I put this? Many jokes and many imitations and many like Mamma Mia to
Mm.
Australia. It's arguably a different country where many people just laugh at it for, the Aussie accent and everything just around. So are we going from one kind of stereotype to another, but they are both so
Mm.
different. So, have you
Yes.
visited Italy since you moved? Because obviously you said you moved at 7, right? So I'm not, I
Yes.
would imagine you don't really remember much around that time.
Oh, I remember a bit, like, because I
Okay,
went to school there for a couple of years as well.
okay.
So I remember a bit, but yeah, I have visited a few times since
Hmm.
then.
Hmm.
Because again, it takes like 20 something hours for us to get anywhere
Yeah.
in the Northern Hemisphere, really. And so, not tons, but actually, I just last year, this time last year, I'd just come home from a trip to Italy
Hmm.
with where my partner who had never been to the Northern Hemisphere and had only been overseas twice prior. This was his first time in Europe, first time in Italy, and so we went over Christmas and New Year's and went all over Italy and a little bit of Paris as well, and just kind of spent 7 weeks, traversing Europe. So that was a lot of
7 weeks.
fun. Yeah, that
Nice.
was that was a big holiday. That was like 3 years of COVID leave. Well, not leave, but COVID leave, but like
Yeah.
3 years of building up leave due to COVID a bit, and let's just spend it all at once. And so that was so much fun, which is why I have to also wait till October for my next one because I'm trying to get my holiday back.
No, I see. I see. So what part of Italy you originally from? Like what city?
Florence.
Oh, Florence. Oh,
Mm,
see, I've never been to Italy. I've never been to
mm,
Australia, so for that
mm.
matter. So I loved, but obviously for me, living in Scotland, Italy is much closer than Australia. So
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
love to go. Why should I go to Florence?
Well, first of all, it's just like what I said before, where Melbourne is better than Sydney.
Hmm.
It's I always like to say that like Florence is to Melbourne what Sydney is to Rome. So like everybody knows about Rome.
Yeah.
It's the big one. I mean, Sydney's not technically the capital, but it's the one that everyone thinks about when they think of
Hmm.
Australia, and it's big and lots of things, blah, blah, blah. But I prefer Florence, just like I prefer Melbourne, because it's the cultural capital of the country. I think
Okay.
that just similar to Melbourne, you can walk everywhere. The food, I mean, to be fair, in Italy, the food's amazing everywhere, so you don't have to
Yeah.
walk. That's not a huge difference. But the Renaissance was born in Florence, like the
Hmm.
reason for the Renaissance. The history is just stunning. All the like I said, all the different museums and the art galleries. I mean, if you're a big history or art lover, then you definitely should go to Florence. But just in general, it's such a great city to really absorb what it's like to be Italian in. And there's, so many different places to go. Like I said, you can just walk to all of them, which is really amazing.
Hmm.
There are so many different districts and areas that you can go to really experience different kinds of Italy as well. And I think that because it's the cultural capital of Italy, you really can get the most out of your trip there. If you only had to pick one, for example.
Yeah.
Plus, on top of that, you can do a day trip to like 8 or 9 different places that are in their own way, you know, astounding. Like obviously there's Chianti, which everyone would know from the wine. So
Hmm.
it's a big wine region. But also, for example, there's San Gimignano, which is the last of the medieval towns where like nothing has been updated in terms of architecture since the 1400s. But it's this beautiful little village. Then you also have Lucca, which has I think the largest wall in like the Northern Hemisphere or something, where it's like, you know, besides the Great Wall, I think it's like
Yeah.
the largest wall that surrounds there's a specific, I have to look it up. There's a specific stat, but basically it's the entire thing is surrounded by this wall and you
Okay.
can walk the wall, and actually even more fun, you can hire a bike, one of those like tandem bikes with your friends and like
Hmm.
ride it around. And we was screaming with laughter when we did it with our friends. It was so great. But besides that, it's also just this beautiful little town. And there's so many of those
Hmm.
around Florence. So it's like you can get to know everything about Italy in there and then travel literally like an hour or not even day trip all around it as well, which is really, really magical.
Would people in Rome agree that Florence is the cultural city of
Absolutely
Italy?
no. No one hates Italians more than other Italians. That is something
Okay.
to note. Like, if you are Italian outside Australia, oh, sorry, outside Australia, geez, what a Freudian slip. If you're an Italian outside of Italy, you
Hmm.
will obviously just associate yourself as Italian. But once you're in Italy, you are Florentine, you are Roman, you are
Hmm.
from Milan. So, number one thing is that Southern Italians and Northern Italians hate each other, cannot stand each other. I'm central Italy, but we tend to associate more with North Italy than South Italy because South Italy is where like all the stereotypes of being Italian come from.
Hmm.
Really is South Italy. So, for example, even everything down to like the coloring. So, obviously, I'm quite pale and I have, you know, light brown hair, that sort of thing. To be fair, some of my pale skin comes from my dad because he's half German.
Okay.
But besides that, you know, the dark skin, the darker hair, also the like very intense religious cultural associations, all of that's very, very southern Italy. The accent, the very, very strong Mamma Mia that you mentioned before, that's
Hmm.
like the Mario-y
Yeah,
accent,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
southern Italians. That's not like my Italian still has an accent, but it's not that accent. It's not
Hmm.
so sing-songy, as well as the mafia, all of that's southern Italy.
Yes.
We don't have a mafia in the top half. And so all of that's the other thing, like a lot of these stereotypes I feel as well aren't even necessarily Italian. They're Italians that immigrated to America, and then the
Hmm.
American Italians, like they are all Southern Italians. They're not
Hmm.
Northern Italians immigrated other places. Most of the Southern Italians immigrated to America. And so all of that sort of idea is all Southern Italian. So that's something to know, is that, like I said, no Italian hates an Italian more than another Italian
Hmm.
if they're not there. So like if you're from Florence, Florence is the greatest place on earth, and you cannot say that anywhere else. I should also mention that the actual Italian language comes from Florence because before World War II, and even still a little bit today, like I mentioned, with Southern Italian being kind of a separate, each region has basically its own dialect, but it's
Yeah.
like a completely different language. I can't understand the other dialects. My mum can, I cannot. And so in World War II, look, Mussolini did a lot of bad things, but what he did do, he did some good question mark things for
Tell me.
Italy as a country. Like, for example, he forced everyone to have an education and he improved a
Hmm.
lot of roads and infrastructure and that sort of thing. But what he also did was say that, like, did not say, but he ordered that everyone start speaking one language.
Hmm.
Because for a really, really long time, Italy wasn't Italy. It was a lot of small kingdoms, right?
Hmm.
Like Milan was one, Florence. Sorry, I'm giving you a whole history now, but
That's fine.
basically, even though it did unify as a country, the mentality was still separate, hence the different languages. And so in World War II, Mussolini was like, nope, everyone's speaking Italian. I don't care. You can speak, I guess, your dialects amongst yourselves, but you have to be able to speak one unified language. And
Yeah.
that language it's called Dante's Italian, because Dante Alighieri, who wrote Inferno,
Yes.
etc., he's Florentine. And so
Mm.
that Florentine Italian is what is now known as the language of Italian.
Okay.
Um, so there you go. But yes, it is very much like everyone is extremely loyal to their region of Italy. So,
Of course. No, I
yeah.
understand that. I remember I used to know this girl and she would date, so she was German and she would
Mm,
date this Italian girl, and it was so awesome because the Italian was from Milan,
mm,
and
mm,
so she would tell me, the German one, she would tell me, so Milan has two football clubs. There's the AC Milan and there's the
mm-hmm,
other Milan club. I can
mm,
remember the
mm,
name right now. And so every time the that derby is on, she's rooting so hard for the one and she hates the other one so badly, even though it's the same
mm.
city. So if
Yeah.
they lose, she's great. If they lose, like if her team loses, oh, she's very sad and she's very
Mm,
angry.
mm.
But if they win, oh, she's over the moon. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fascinating, even that like the same city. It's just the football clubs are so intertwined with Italy, and you root for one and you despise the other.
Oh
Insane.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean like that's the other thing with like soccer and stuff.
Hmm.
Um in Italy, like I haven't even been to a soccer game because people die at soccer games. Like they're so intense, the
Yeah.
fans, that you cannot attend unless you have to know what you're kind of getting into.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting you say that because yeah, even within the regions, there's war between
Yeah.
different because for like decades and centuries there was war. Like for example, there's Siena where it's a tiny little town outside of Florence.
Hmm.
And first of all, Florence conquered Siena way back in the day, but then within Siena, there's 14 different basically groups or like districts, and
Hmm.
they would like war and they have this like very very famous horse race they do every single year, and it's basically for the triumph of each district. But it's like even within there's like the intense loyalty, and I think that just comes from coming from an ancient society sort of thing. Like the stuff that people set in stone, they are set. No one ever wants to like
Yeah.
it's very hard to be unified when for so long, and especially because Italy once upon a time, ancient Rome, biggest empire in the world. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
yeah, it's very interesting coming from a culture like that.
So given you were born and kind of raised in Italy, and then you came back several times,
Mm.
obviously there's gonna be many, but what would you say are some of the key differences between living in Melbourne or Australia and living in Italy from your perspective?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, the weather, obviously, for
Mhm.
one, it's much hotter
Wait, in
down
Australia,
here
Yeah,
in
Australia.
Australia. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
it's much hotter down here and much more unpredictable, I would say as well.
Hmm.
Also just in general, like the flora, like the plant and the foliage and environment around. So obviously Italy has a lot of like traditional, what you would expect, across like Europe and the Northern Hemisphere, like forests and that type of greenery and mountains and wide open plains and that sort of thing. While here in Australia, we have the bush and the animals are all weird experiments that went wrong. And like, we obviously also have a lot of bugs that you
Yes.
do not get um, anywhere else in the world. And yeah, and also like we have bush like that instead we don't have a forest, we have a bush, and it's all very dry and it's all very arid environments. And I would also say it's a lot bigger as a result. So, like the spaces that we
Hmm.
have, obviously, like while Italy has way more people, like most places in the world have way more people. Like Australia only has, maybe I think it's now maybe 27 million people, 28 million people. Like that's the
Rookie numbers.
entire country. Yeah, that's the entire country. And so but we have one of the biggest land masses in the
Yep,
world as well. But on that, you can't live in most of the country because
exactly.
it doesn't support life. So it's a bit of a weird country, to be perfectly honest. And so because of that, I think it's also like Melbourne, I would say, is also a little bit of a separate like culture to the rest of Australia. Like there's Australian, and then there's like Melbourne's much more multicultural as a city. And so you are much more globalized living here.
Hmm.
While if you go to like Perth or something in WA, you're not going to see a lot of people from other countries or food from other countries. And so yeah, I think that would be it. I also, from what I've heard, apparently Australians, like in general, we tend to be a little bit more relaxed as a people, which can be good and a bad thing.
Hmm.
And so like, and I just also mean that in the we won't this idea of like, for example, going to Disney World and being really, really angry because your child is not the most important thing in the entire world. Australians don't care. They'll be like,
Yeah.
whatever, man. Like, let's move on. So yeah, I like those are some things. I would also say obviously that Italy, even though the southern is more religious, it's still hard to avoid religion in Italy
Hmm.
because the Vatican literally is within the country. And
Yeah.
so much of the country is like, and it was built due to the religion and
Yes.
everything. And so I'm technically Roman Catholic, but
Hmm.
um very much lapsed. But like that it's everywhere. There are churches everywhere. And but the other thing is that they did beautiful architectural constructions that you can just go and appreciate from a historical standpoint as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
While in Australia, it's like I don't know anybody that goes to church.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
know anybody that's religious. It's a lot more contemporary that way, I would
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
Um, and also we don't get a lot of things, which sucks because we're so far away. And when we do, it's really hard because like even something as simple as for the nerds out there, but my partner, he really, really wants a Valve Index VR system, and he can't buy one because Steam doesn't sell to Australia because it's way too complicated. And we're not a big enough market. That's
Hmm.
the other thing is because we're only 27, 28 million people,
Hmm.
like it's not worth it for many people, which is why, for example, Disney decided, oh, no, we're not going to sell Blu-rays in Australia and New Zealand anymore because you're too small of a market. It's not worth the shipping costs.
Yeah,
So
that's insane
that's
to me.
fun.
That's
Yeah, we
just
get
so
forgotten a
weird.
lot. Yeah.
Which to me, like it's insane because as you mentioned, it's 28 million people. I know in a global scale, like like there's nothing like that. Like America
Mm,
300
mm,
plus,
mm.
Europe, like Europe
Yeah.
is like all its own thing, but many countries in Europe. But like
Yeah.
just to disregard the entire Australian nation or
Yeah.
continent, really, it's insane to me. It's just,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
but
absolutely. And it's funny because even though we're not that many people, I'd still say that we're quite like pop culture, like we're quite relevant as a
mhm,
culture. There, especially with how many Australians have been taking over quote unquote, Hollywood and music and that sort of thing. And so
exactly.
I feel like we're actually becoming more present in the last few years, which is again funny because yeah, it's the same amount of kind of people, but
Yeah.
um yeah, we're really not that many. Like there's more
Hmm.
people in one city in America than there is in the entire country. And I can tell you right now, I guess in a way similarly to Italy, but Australians do not get along with other Australians from other states. Like that's a whole other thing. It's like
Ah,
I'm from Victoria, and we're like, I'd like to say the culturally refined state. And then you
okay.
have like Queensland, which is the equivalent of like Florida.
Hmm.
That's what and we're all, they're the one. And then you've got Tasmania, where everybody makes jokes that they're all inbred, because it's so like in the entire state, there's like a few 100,000 people. Like there's no one in the entire state. And so it's just like fun little
Hmm.
like things like that too.
This is, see, to me, Australia has always been fascinating thing,
Mm,
right? Because
mm,
I've never been, and I
yeah.
always hear the jokes, and I see that because of the internet, I see all the creepy crawlies you have down there. And that was one of my questions. So
Yeah.
I understand it's, you live in Melbourne, so it's not as
Mm,
big of a deal when you're in
mm,
like city, populated city, where it's like,
mm.
architecture, all that stuff. However, how does one survive in Australia, in a continent that seemed to be designed where the animals and creepy crawlies have evolved to literally kill people. Because if I'm not mistaken, some of the deadliest spiders, some of the deadliest snakes are, native to Australia. So how does one
Yeah.
survive there?
It's funny because everyone always asks that question. Like, that's one of the first few questions
Yes.
people ask. We really like I wouldn't imagine it's any more present than bugs are in most other people's life. It might
Hmm.
be, and I'm just used to it. Like, obviously we have a lot of like mosquitoes and that sort of thing around summertime, but like those deadly spiders and deadly snakes
Hmm.
do not just like hang out.
Yeah.
I think with snakes we tend to be just what happens is when it's summertime and we're hiking, we just have to avoid tall grass
Hmm.
because any of them might be hiding. But even then, like we know what to do. Which,
Hmm.
fun fact, if you get bitten by a snake, you have to just lie down and stop moving because you don't want it to get to your heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've like, if you live in the country, you're going to be much more, it's going to be much more prevalent.
Hmm.
Like my partner grew up in the country, and so he would have to kill the odd snake here and there. A lot
Hmm.
of dads decapitating snakes with shovels. Um, but even then, they're not like every day. It's like every now and again. Like right now, you know, it's summer, so we might get the odd cockroach or two. So
Hmm.
you'll see me every now and again be like, nope, no, we're all good. And then, we get like moths during winter and like yeah, I just we don't they're not that present
Hmm.
in my mind. It's not like we're constantly, you see those videos of people with those giant spiders, that sort of thing. You do see those from time to time, but to be honest, if you see those gigantic spiders, you kind of just want to leave them alone because not because they'll hurt you, because they eat other spiders and they are not interested in humans. Now, if they're in your house,
Yes.
then like, yeah, you can just kind of pick it up and put it outside. Now, I'm not saying I would. I'd get Toby to pick it up and put it
Yeah.
outside. But if they're just like near your car or like in your shed or outside or something, they're not really going to harm anyone.
Hmm.
It's also funny because we have daddy long legs here, which are very spindly, very
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thin, and they're technically one of the most poisonous oh, is it poison? No, venomous
Venomous. Yeah.
spiders in the world, but they can't break human skin. So they're actually not dangerous at all. And they're very
Hmm.
small and like you can very easily squish them or move them or do whatever you need to do. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Like I guess the bug I would see the most, or the in creepy crawly, would be a spider. Like we do get, you get quite a few spiders a year, but you either move them outside or you squish them. It's not that like you don't get those giant hairy ones that often. And
Hmm.
even if you do, you can just pick it up and put it away. You'll be fine.
See, that was my next question. The huntsman spider, right? The
Yeah,
famous or
that's
infamous
yes.
huntsman spider.
Yeah.
I know, like, I don't really, when it comes to spiders, I don't mind the tiny ones, but the big ones, like tarantula or huntsman, no, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I know the huntsman spider is not actually venomous to humans,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually are, as you said, they actually hunt down the other spiders. So if it's in your
Mm-hmm.
home, you want to leave it alone just because it actually like cleans up your home from different
Yeah.
spiders, right?
Yeah.
However, so how many you have you encountered so far?
Not many. I reckon in
Okay,
my life, maybe two or three. Like
okay,
they're not that common. Like I said, if you're in the country, you'll get them a lot
yeah,
more.
hmm,
But yeah, I would say when I had like my mum has a couple at her house apparently, but she's
oh,
just been leaving them alone, because they're just hanging out. I would say that if it's like a pregnant spider, I'd probably take her. Like even if it was a huntsman, I'd still be like, nah, get out of my house
yeah,
because you're pregnant and you'll give birth to hundreds of babies.
hmm,
But like, yeah, like it's really not that many. Where you are most likely to see them is going to be your car. And
hmm,
that's more the scary one because you don't want to have a spider suddenly crawl onto the windshield while you're driving. So
yeah.
that's, what you want to check. Oh, we did have one the other day, so maybe four in my life.
And you're not really also like you're in the same boat as me, like I'm guessing. You're not really happy with the spiders.
Oh, I mean, no, I'm not like, I'm definitely part of the bugs freak me out brigade. Like I said the other
Hmm.
day, I had to kill a cockroach and I screamed the entire time. But you kind of just have to do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no, I'm not a fan. Like if I were to see like a wolf or a huntsman spider outside, like in the garden or whatever, I'd just leave it alone. That's fine. It's just if just don't be in my house. That's my
Hmm.
thing. I'm like
Hmm.
I want my house clean and I don't want like it's really a baby's thing for me. I just don't want hundreds of them. So
Exactly.
yeah.
No, yeah. No,
And then
babies.
if you're in the country, you also get a lot of crickets. That's the other thing you get a lot of.
Ah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
That I would imagine that also gets annoying, especially crickets are loud. So if you have
Yeah, yeah. They're
many,
mostly little ones and they just jump all over the joint. But I was at my friend's house the other day and she lives in the country and it was like, yeah, they're constantly a cricket on the ground and she had to like pick it up and throw it outside.
damn, never-ending task just to pick
Yeah,
it up, pick it up. So,
exactly.
so before we move on, there is a if I were to tell you you live in Australia, I live in Scotland, there is a bit of a connect here. Would you know what I'm referring to? Like there's a bit of a connection, not connection, maybe that's the wrong word. There's a
Just that
similarity between Australians and Scotland, Scotlandians, Scottish people.
uh, is it just that we're both part of the Commonwealth?
Yeah, that might be one thing. I
Okay.
was referring to swearing and how much
Oh,
people tend to swear.
yeah,
Because there is
yes.
a specific word, both
Oh,
Scottish
the
people
yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah,
Aussie
yeah.
people are not too shy to use. So where do you
Oh
stand
no.
on that word? Like, I don't mind
Oh, I'm not
using it.
offended. Okay, I'm not offended by it at
Okay,
all. Like we
okay.
say it all the time.
Do you
We
say it all the
literally
time?
we say it all the time. Like especially like I mean it depends on the context,
Yes,
but
yes.
yeah, it's no more. Wait, can we swear on here? Am I
Of
good to
course.
swear?
Yes. That's
Okay,
why I'm
cool.
asking.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, no, no. I mean, well, this is, and I will get into that when we're going to my hot takes, but I always have to be very wary because in Australia we swear all the time. Like, what I would say is we're not going to say cunt in like a business setting,
Yep.
but that's our limit. Like, I've said every other swear word in a
Yes.
business setting, in a business meeting, like, with higher ups, that sort of thing. People don't care if you swear. But I would say cunt is still like if you're in a business setting, you might not say it. But if like right now, I'm not gonna be like,
Hmm.
one of our tourism ads literally uses the word. So
I think I've seen it.
yeah, so the Northern Territory is one of our states slash territories, one of seven or whatever. And they made a tourism ad like a few years ago, and it's literally like "See you in the NT,"
Yeah.
and so it's just a big cunt on the on the screen. Because yeah, in Australia it's very much two different intonations. You either do it like, oh yeah, you fucking cunt, like you're when you're being really angry, when you're like, oh,
Yes.
how fucking, like, really, that's the most violent swear you could use against another person. But then on the other end, it can be in like a referring to your friend sort of
Yes.
situation as well. So it's just a tone thing. But no Australian's going to get upset if you say that
See,
because we
here's
say
the
it all
thing, right? The reason I ask, because many Scottish people here, obviously, it's exactly as you said. Cant is such a weird word, or it's
the
a
time.
brilliant word, but it's weird because it can be used in two different intonations. It can be used as the worst thing, or just reserved for your best mate. Oh, you're a proper cunt.
Mm,
Oh, come here.
mm, mm,
And
mm,
the reason I asked, I used to work with this Scottish girl. She was great. She was amazing. She actually
mm,
went to Australia for a bit and she loved it. And when I was
mm,
talking to her once and I was describing our manager and like
mm.
this guy, and he deserved to be called a cunt. And
Yeah.
she freaked the fuck out. She was like, "Oh, you used the." She was very high pitched, even more
Yeah,
high
yeah.
pitched than me, than if people can believe it. And she was like, "Oh no, did you don't use this bad word?" I was like, "Wait, what? You mean the cunt?" Yeah, you used it again. Why would you use it? It's so bad. I'm like, damn, this you're the first. And she was proper like she was born and raised in Scotland. So I was like,
Mm,
you're the
mm,
first Scottish person ever like that has a problem with the word cunt. Damn, that's amazing.
mm.
So I didn't use it in front of her because, so
Mm.
we just,
I mean, yeah, you'll have the like, if you're around like a boomer or something, you
mhm,
probably, depending on who they are, like
mhm.
Toby's parents aren't, or Toby's dad's not going to care, but Toby's mum,
Yeah.
would get offended. So it's like, it's you got to know the context and that sort of thing. But that's just like in general, somebody who doesn't like swearing. It's not really
No,
limited
yeah.
to that word. Yeah.
I think she was more that because I think she was younger than me by like a
Mm.
few years. So she was definitely not a boomer. But no, like I think she just, there are some people who just think this is one bit too far, one step too
Yeah.
far. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
should never
Yeah.
use this because it's such a brute word, such a brute word. Why would you ever use it? And I'm like, exactly, this is why I would use it.
Yeah, exactly. It because it also is because fuck doesn't like it doesn't affect, it doesn't
Yep.
cause any effect in me anymore. Or like I said, I say fuck in business settings all the time. And I
Mm,
work at a university, but I'll be like, oh, for fuck's sake, or like,
mm,
oh, this fucking thing, or something like that. And so
yeah.
sometimes you need that extra step just to like emphasize what you're saying.
No, I 100% agree with that. We are kind of the same, like in the sense that in my business setting, we are not really professional. We're IT
Mm.
people. We're not really professional. So we
Yeah.
just swear all the time. But
Mm.
excuse me. But yeah, it's so I would just wanted to get your perspective because I know if there's any other nation besides like the UK that,
Mm.
because in America, many
Yes.
Americans wouldn't say the C word. It's a C word.
Many
And I'm like,
Americans don't well, I mean, we can get to it a bit early because
uh-huh.
the cancellation, the get cancelled conversation, what the one I had last minute thought about
Hmm.
was literally the fact that I have always thought that Americans are way too precious when it comes to
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
swearing and just in general being exposed to mature themes. Like I think that which is funny because they're the ones who have kind of been at the center of the world in terms of like media for such a
Hmm.
long time. And yet, for example, every time I go on the Sif Pop podcast, whether it's Writer's Room or the actual Sif Pop
Yeah.
podcast or any other podcast I go on that's American,
Hmm.
I have to constantly censor myself
Me too.
because
Me too.
I being Australian, we use swear words like punctuation. We
Hmm.
don't even, half the time, I don't even realize I'm swearing, like until,
Yeah.
and so when I go on, I have to, because it's even like blasphemous swearing is also quite intense. I know for some Americans, like they don't even call it swearing, they call it cursing, and
Hmm.
which I find so funny. And it's just like, sometimes I'll go to say, oh my God. And then I'll be like, can I say God or do I have to say gosh? Like, is that allowed? Can I,
Yep.
and so like shit, the fact I don't even think of that as a swear word anymore.
No.
You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's just whatever. And things like even I've heard that some Americans can't are shocked by Australians and people from the UK saying bloody.
Of
And
course.
then yeah, and it's just like I think it's because there is such a power given to
Hmm.
words and themes and that sort of thing there, which we, like I said, and also, I mean, it's related. UK, like
Yeah.
Australia, the UK colonized Australia, so we're like a lot of the Australians are just
Sorry about
UK
that.
people. I mean, don't apologize to me. I also immigrated here.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, there are definitely and also you're originally from Czech Republic, so that's
Yes.
not your fault either.
I'm only half UK, so I'm only half British, so
And
I'm all
to
good.
be fair, Scotland was also invaded. Like I would say that the Scottish are also it's England. Let's so
I was gonna
England
say
is the one that
it's the bloody English.
yeah, it's the bloody English. And so, but it's like of the UK, they also kind of just see it as like it's a word. Why give power to a word? Especially
Hmm.
when if you read stories and watch movies or play games or whatever, you're going to be exposed to things. But I think that there's been this weird, like, it's gotten even more intense because of this idea of like, we have to protect children, we have to protect children. And this is a bit of a, as well, hot take, I guess, from me, you could say, which is I think that we're going a bit too far with the protecting of children. I think that,
Ooh.
like, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, let's go back to when they were working in the industrial age or whatever. But
Well, America
when I was
is.
at, yeah, and that's the other thing. But they're the society that is really intense on this protecting children thing. You can't have both sides. You either want to protect them or you don't care. Like,
Yeah.
because this always for me originates back to a class I did in university. So when I was at university, of course, I studied film, but I also
Hmm.
I did a double major in film and also criminology. And when I studied criminology, one of the most interesting classes I did was basically called Youth and Crime. And
Hmm.
it was looking at the experience of youth in a criminal context. And the very first week was all about like, what is a child? Like, what does that mean? And the modern definition and interpretation of what is a child only came about in the 80s. So
Okay.
the idea of the milk carton kid, that's really the thing that helped, which is why there is such a 80s renaissance kind of thing that's been happening for a few years now in media. And it's because that was the last time when kids could go out for days and the parents wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
Because back then there wasn't this and that's also why for example, when you watch a lot of films and TV shows from the 80s that are for kids, they would traumatize you. I mean, one of
Yep.
the defining films of my life has been Labyrinth, which is from 1986.
Yes.
And I watched that for the first time, I reckon, when I was 5. And yes, it definitely gave me nightmares, but it's fine. It's all right that a kid
Hmm.
has nightmares. It's okay that they get exposed to scary things. I mean, it's also like if you look at the Disney films of yore, like there are some horrifying scenes,
Hmm.
even like Hunchback, which makes no sense that it's a kid's film. There's literally a song about rape in that movie.
Yep.
And people would have taken their kids to it and like watched it and everything and nobody cared. Like I'm sure the odd person cared or whatever, but like on average.
Yes.
And now it's like, I feel like if I remember having a conversation with a parent I knew that didn't want to show their kid Lion King until
Mm.
like they were, in their double digits or 10 or 11 or something. And I'm like, why? Just watch it. It's fine. It's okay. For me, this is really where my belief comes down to. I think it's more important to expose a kid or a child to scary themes and these ideas when they're in a safe space
Hmm.
than and then you can help them work through it and understand it. And yeah, they might have the odd nightmare or two, but I think it's physically impossible for a human to go through life and not have a nightmare. It's okay. Like I once, when I was 9 years old, my dad showed me Scary Movie 3, and I didn't sleep in my bed for 3 months because I was so scared of the little girl from The Ring. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even The Ring, it was the
Yes.
parody of The Ring. And I genuinely didn't, I slept with my parent, like in my parents' bed for 3 months because I was so scared. I'm still fine. I'm sleeping in my own bed. Well, with
Yes.
my partner now, but you know what I mean? And like everything is fine. I'm relatively sane, I'd like to say. And I just think going back to my point is that I think if you expose, kids to these ideas and these themes, and then you help them work through it now, better that than they do it later on or they do it in secret. And
Hmm.
then,
Hmm.
it could end up being quite detrimental. I mean, like, for example, sorry, I'm going on a rant now,
That's
but
fine. That's fine.
there's I think a great way of explaining the difference between Americans and, for example, the UK and Australia in terms of this idea is the way in which films and TV shows are rated.
Hmm.
So in Australia, we have obviously, your G and PG parental guidance, but then that's where it kind of diverges because
Hmm.
in America, I don't know the full extent, but I know that there's like, for everyone, then there's PG-13
Yes.
and then there's R,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
There's like no in between.
No.
But with Australia, it's literally like G, PG, parental guidance, right? Which
Hmm.
is a lot of things. Then you have M15 plus, where it's basically we suggest that you be 15, but you actually don't need to be. So
Okay.
you could be an 11-year-old and walk into a cinema and watch an M15 plus. Like I think like the Harry Potter films past a certain point used to be rated M15 plus.
Okay.
Then you have MA 15 plus, which is basically you have to be 15. And even more interesting, you have to be, if you want to see it on your own, you have to be 15.
Hmm.
If you're not 15, you have to be attended by somebody over the age of 18.
Okay.
So if you were 11, you could go as long as somewhat like a parent or somebody older was with you.
Hmm.
And then we have R. So I watched many MA. My dad used to take me to the movies to see MA 15 plus films when I was 8 years old.
Hmm.
And it was fine. Like a lot of them, might have been a bit scary, might have been a bit sexual, whatever. And like, as in like one of the films was like Good Luck Chuck, which admittedly was a bad idea to go see with my dad, but we didn't know at the time. We were like, let's just go to the movies.
Hmm.
But there's this idea where it's basically to the discretion of the parent.
Yeah.
And like I don't, if the kid's mature enough to go see it, they're mature enough to go see it. But in America, it's like PG-13 or you have to be 18. And I'm like, there's such a discrepancy in age between
Hmm.
13 and 18 that like a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old could totally see many movies that are blocked for them, even though I'm sure that they, in this day and age, especially with streaming, it's not a big deal. But it's just something that I always think back to being an 8-year-old myself and seeing films that were widely inappropriate according to that. And it being probably a better thing that I do so in that context than
Hmm.
do it on my own later on or not have been exposed to it until I was 18 and then have to deal with that later in life. And I
Yeah.
think that just comes down to words as well, where it's like it's just a word.
Yeah.
Yes, don't swear in the inappropriate context. Learn when.
Hmm.
And then when you're an adult, just like how you can drink here and in the UK at 18, you
Hmm.
can make your own decisions as to how you say things, when you say things, what you see, and it's fine. But again, in America, you have to wait till you're 21 to drink. So that's a whole other
Yeah.
ball game and kettle of fish anyway. So yeah, there's the end of my little rant and my main hot take.
No, that's fine. That's look, we've covered quite a lot of ground there, so I would
Yeah.
like to go back to the swearing.
Yes.
I 100% agree with you, basically with everything you said, and I would also like to add, many people say, well, if you swear a lot, that just means, there was there's this argument that, oh, that just means you're kind of illiterate because you cannot express
Mm.
yourself any different way, so you need to use
Mm.
swear words. I'm like, no. I like to swear because I like them words. I actually like to punctuate my sentences. They actually mean, like you said,
Mm.
they punctuate the sentence.
Mm.
I like to swear, but I also am selective. I'm not gonna say
Mm.
fuck every
Yeah.
single sentence.
Yeah.
So I'm selective about where to swear and how I'm swearing. So to
Mm.
me, there's nothing illiterate about that. There's
Mm.
more about, I want this sentence to have a meaning. So if I say,
Mm.
shut the fuck up, that just means, like I'm mad.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I 100% agree there. And also with the overprotection of children with this regard, with this,
Yeah.
I also 100% in the same boat because again, my European upbringing, I still
Mm.
remember when I saw Never Ending Story when I was like
Yeah. Yeah. That's
7 or
another great
8.
example.
And it's
Yeah.
like obviously there's not like over the top nudity or swearing or anything like that, but there is a fucking dramatic scene of literal horse dying in a swamp of sadness.
I will never get over it. I'll never get over that
Can
scene.
you imagine? Can you imagine scene like that in nowadays Disney
Mm.
movie that is aimed for little children? There will be
Mm.
empty
Mm.
theaters. There will be people will be shouting. They will be leaving the theaters as they happen. There will be so many complaints.
Mm.
It would be insane. But I also am in the same boat. Like what you said. If you leave the children, exposed to this in a
Mm.
safe environment, and then you can talk about it afterwards. It's
Mm.
like, yes, it scared you a bit, but it doesn't exist, right? It doesn't
Mm.
exist. It's just a TV. It's not gonna harm you. And
Mm.
there's a reason for that. Or, I don't know where I heard it, but some people, what they do is then they watch a movie, like on a Blu-ray, let's say, and then they watch behind the scenes with the child. So it's like,
Mm.
see how they made this. See, so they are
Yeah,
actually
that's
fine.
actually a
This
great
person.
idea.
So like,
Mm.
it's not mine, but I've heard it from somebody, and it's like, see, this person is not that. See, this is just pretend, and this is how they made it. So and
Mm.
now children, and this is the other thing, children nowadays understand much more.
Mm.
Even like I'm still not that old, so I still remember how it was used to. Like I'm the last generation, I believe, that grew up without internet. Like when I
Yeah.
was like internet became a thing or like much prevalent when I was like 16, 17. And I'm
Mm.
so glad because nowadays I don't have any kids. However, my sister
Mm.
has two.
Mm.
and they are 7 and 4. And what those two boys know now and how they can get around like technology and all of that, like I wasn't that smart when I was their age. They are much like they are, further ahead when they are 7. When I was
Mm.
my little ass was when I was 7. So
Mm.
do they need to be protected? I feel like no. I feel like they need to be more explained. If anything, they need to be explained much more because nowadays
Mm.
it used to be like you say movies, but you would go to movies with your parents. You would go to movies with
Mm.
somebody. But internet, you're a few clicks away from like one of like most hardcore porn you've ever imagined. So if anything, you need to actually
Mm.
speak to your children like, hey, not everything you see on the internet is appropriate for
Mm.
you. You shouldn't be watching this. But obviously, they are kids. They are curious. So like at some point they'll start Googling different things, different interesting things, and then is when the parent like sees the history is like, oh my fucking God, what do I do now? And it's like, you know what? Let's ban
Mm.
everything. Let's fucking never speak of it
Oh, and
again.
that's the thing, isn't it? It's like all banning now. And I'm like, well,
Yep.
that's stupid. Like, I haven't seen it yet, but one of the nominated documentary short films this year is called The ABCs of Book Banning.
Mm,
And I'm super, it's on Amazon, by the way, I figured out, because I'm on my hunt
nice.
for everything right now. I'm very interested in that because one thing I will never ever agree with is book banning or book burning. I think
Yes.
that no matter, it's like I understand that a lot of things of our past are inappropriate, offensive, etc. now, but I think is exceptionally important that we have access to them so that we can read or watch or be exposed and then understand. I mean, it's isn't it one of the most famous quotes of all times? Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. Like
Yep.
you have to know about the bad things to make sure that you know why they're bad so that you don't do it. I mean, again, this is way more intense and way more serious, but it's like how people are trying to, sweep the Holocaust in World War II under the rug and be like, no, that didn't happen. No, no, no. What
Yeah.
are you talking? It's fine. Don't, it's too intense. It's too scary. It's like, no, we have to know about the atrocities of the past because we need to know how horrible they were and how
Yes.
terrible they were. And that's why it's important when you're in school to learn about them and the extent of them and the reason why they happened and why we let them happen. And just like with books, like if I read, there are so many classics I've read where you're reading it and you're just like, I can't believe they're allowed to do this. Or even movies, like for example, even Disney films, like
Mm-hmm.
Dumbo has some of the most offensive imagery
Mm-hmm.
and like it is quite effed up.
Yes.
But it's important to still be able to watch it because then you can be like, why is that effed up? Okay. Like it's too late now. It already exists. It's been around
Mm-hmm.
since the, 50s or whatever,
Yeah.
40s, 50s. Like we might as well learn from it. And I'm not saying like, oh, well, we should keep being offensive and inappropriate in everything we create, but I think that it's just as dangerous to block knowledge because that's the only way you'll learn is by like by learning about racism, classism, sexism, all of that through texts and through I think media is one of the most powerful ways to share those
Yes.
ideals and those themes because it's one of the best ways for someone to consume it without realizing they're consuming it
Mm-hmm.
and at least help them war with those concepts in their mind and kind of come to their own conclusions.
No, movies and
But
TV shows are definitely the most accessible form of media there is. Like the most
mm,
accessible form of art there is. Like maybe books, but many people
don't
don't
read.
read. But I
I
think I
know.
think there's actually more a study that actually people of our age read more than the previous generation. So that's
Mm,
a misconception. But to your
yeah.
point, yet again, 100% agree. Like when there was like some of the shows nowadays, Netflix removed
Mm,
an episode or two where they would have a blackface, right? Or
mm,
or there would be, or they would remove this movie because of that. And again,
mm.
we're not saying neither of us are saying racism is cool. No,
Yeah.
it's not. It is
Yeah.
100% not. It needs to be said.
Yeah.
However, should we remove the parts of history, film history, TV history, like, art history because it makes us uncomfortable? Or should there be some sort of like what I like about, I don't like many things Disney does, but what I like
But
and
the content
admire,
warnings, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
what I liked and
Mm,
admire from the day one is they didn't tamper with, well, they do tamper with some movies, like, censoring,
mm,
what was it in Splash? He censored her butt, so they made her they made her
yeah.
hair longer so it would cover her butt because obviously, it's a kids movie. They cannot see butts because,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, so they have the warning, like, hey, we
Mm,
know, I'm loosely translating. Hey, we know
mm,
this shit is fucked up. However, it would be much worse to censor it or to cut it out and pretend like this never happened. We have this
mm,
past, the past is there for a reason. Fucking do
mm.
your research. So
Yeah,
it's not like,
yeah.
it's not like we condone, or we like, oh yeah, this past is totally cool. We would love to go back, 70 years from now.
Mm,
This
mm,
is that. No. It's more about, again, if you remove it and if you ban it, oh, this episode is no longer available. Like there's an episode of Community that's not available,
mm,
even though it wasn't really a blackface, but there was a character in a black
mm,
like makeup, so
mm,
it was taken down from streaming services. And I'm like, what will happen is many people who will watch Community, either they still have it on DVDs or they would just
mm,
download it and watch it someplace illegally. Like at the end of the
mm,
day, it's kind of the Barbara Streisand effect. You don't want people
mm.
to take notice of something and you therefore remove it. And then people are like, wait, this has been removed. Let me watch why it's been removed. And more
Yeah,
people watch it based on that. Like there's an
yeah.
infamous South Park episode that actually showed Prophet Muhammad. It was quite it
Oh,
was quite
wow.
spicy at the time.
Mm,
And you can still search it on online. So I actually watched it and they have a big monologue. You know how the old school South Park always did. Oh, so what did
mm.
we learn today? Well, we learned this. And there was this monologue and they aired it beeped. Like the entire thing was like, well, we learned today that, and it was like beep for like 2 minutes. And I was like, well, how bad was it? And so I looked it
Mm.
up, and they were just saying, well, we learned that some group, even though we should be all equal, some groups are more equal than others. So if we can watch, if we can make fun of Christianity all we want and everything's fine, but Islam, we cannot touch this because then people bomb shit and people be mad. So, there's no more equality because you cannot make fun of this. And it was just whole entire thing about this. And I'm like, damn,
Mm,
that must have
mm.
taken some balls to do that.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
nowadays,
that's a very Matt Stone and Trey Parker thing. I mean, Book of
yep,
Mormon's one of my favorite musicals of all time because I think and I mean we all know Team America World
yes.
Police, like they're very good at kind of communicate not even at communicating, they just don't care and just will
Hmm.
do what they want.
And famously, because they mocked well, they mocked everybody, and they
Yeah,
mocked
they've mocked
Scientology.
everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they mocked Scientology to that point where they would hire Scientology, like church, hired private detectives to dig up some dirt on them, and they spent years and years basically following them, going through their past and everything, and they couldn't find any single thing. Like, like so
They're
they are
just two
pretty,
dudes that
yeah,
like
they're
to
just
make
two
fun
dudes
of people. Like, it's
and everything.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah. I'm surprised they didn't just like plant something. I feel like that might be in the future. Who knows?
possibly
We'll
like, well,
see.
nowadays truth no longer exists. It's much
Well, and
easier to plant
that's
something.
why I love, yeah, that's why I love books so much because I feel like especially books of the past in a way, not that, which is funny I say that because I definitely am not someone who exclusively reads classics. In fact, a
Hmm.
lot of times when I read classics I have to struggle through them because I'm like, oh, this is so
Hmm.
boring, but it's important that you read this.
Yes.
But like that, yeah, part of the reason I love books so much is that I still feel like, say what you want, obviously, with everything. Like, there's
Hmm.
no expert opinion anywhere anymore,
Yeah.
but I still feel like traditionally published books still have an amount of like they have to have been at least a little bit good at what they did. Whatever it was, even if they're not great writers,
Hmm.
somebody had to think that there was something worth sharing here, and it went through
Yes.
all this work to get published, like traditionally. That so to me, it's like at least that's something, especially then if it then gets picked up by lots of prizes and all of that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and so unlike, becoming a like with news and journalism and stuff, I always think like something my friends and I always say, it's like I miss when journalism was when they used to make journalism movies and
Yeah.
used to be like, yeah, that is a ethical profession.
Mm.
And now it's like, I mean, you can just find the journalist that agrees with you, and then you have the expert opinion you need.
And that's not dangerous at all to live within
Yeah.
like one's bubble. Just, the
Yeah.
echo chamber idea, which does
Yeah, it's
exist.
echo chamber and confirmation bias. Like that's kind of the world we're living in, which is kind of depressing.
And we can all thank to Facebook. Like Facebook,
I know.
I don't want to be that guy, but Facebook really can be tracked to a lot of things when it comes to what's gone wrong in the last 10 years or so.
Mm,
That Facebook
yeah.
is unfortunately the biggest culprit of a lot of those things. So
But I do wonder if it hadn't been Facebook, if it would have been just another one. That's why,
no, it
like,
would.
I also miss MySpace. Like, remember MySpace? Like, I just love that Tom, who was
Hmm.
everyone's friend on MySpace, literally just created this. And then when Facebook started taking over, he was like, I'm done,
Yeah.
sold it, left. No one's heard from him since.
I've
Like,
never been on MySpace. I know of it. I've never been
oh,
there,
okay.
to be fair. But I know,
Oh,
like,
it was a magical time.
that's what I keep hearing. That's what I keep
Yeah.
hearing. There was the
Except you used to rank your friends. I feel like that was the most intense thing. Everyone's page had their top 8 friends, then you'd be ranking all your friends. But besides that, it was like, you could code it so that your profile looked however you wanted. You have your
yeah.
favorite music playing. It
Hmm.
was a crazy time.
Oh, that's what I keep hearing. Like, you need to know a bit of HTML, and you were the you
Yeah,
were the king between your
yeah.
friends.
I
Yeah.
learned HTML because of MySpace. Yeah. So here you go.
So, any more hot topics or any more controversial topics you would like to touch?
I mean, I feel like I've pretty much covered. Like
Yeah.
I had other ones, but I feel like I covered my consensus with that.
No, that's good.
Like I mentioned to you before we were recording, it was on the note, and it's kind of in the vein of what we've been what
Hmm.
we've been talking about. But with the recent announcement, that NATO being like everyone should be prepared to go to war in the next
Hmm.
20 years, and then the UK being like we're going to start conscripting, which affects both of us because you're in Scotland and I'm in
Yep.
Australia. So I was like, I don't care. I'm not going to war. There's no way, nothing you could do could convince me to go fight for these governments. Like
Same.
there is, I don't care how many white feathers you give me. I don't care how, if you send me to jail for 5 years during wartime, jail, great.
Hmm.
Roof over my head, bed, 3 meals a day. I don't like I'll be fine. I'll be totally fine. And also just because, but I'm actually curious to see because I think a lot of people feel that way. I
Hmm.
don't the back in the 40s and whatever it used to be like no patriotism, blah blah
Yeah.
blah, especially in like America and that. But I feel that people are so disillusioned by their governments nowadays that there isn't this desire to be a
Hmm.
patriot and fight because they're especially the Russians in Russia. I would
Yep.
be killed immediately. Immediately. I'm not
Yep.
useful.
That's
So yeah.
no, like I'm again in the same boat. Like I would not want to go fight for this country because first, I don't really believe, well, look, we have technically a separate government in Scotland, but
Yeah.
realistically we do not.
Yes.
Realistically, they have a power over Scotland, right? So yes, we
Yes.
have a
Just
different
like no,
laws.
it's just like technically they have over Australia too. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But like, realistically, if I were to go to war, I would not be fighting for Scotland. I would be fighting for the UK, for the English.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what? You know what? I'm good. I'm good. And also,
Exactly.
like, yeah, and also I was gonna say something, but I now forgot.
Oh, okay. It'll
No,
come
it's
back to you.
just yeah. No, but it is fucking crazy. Like, yeah, oh yeah, this is what I was gonna tell you. I don't know. You can tell me how the situation is in Australia, but you know what's scary? I've noticed as over
Mm.
the past yeah, almost 2 years now, there have been a lot of army recruiting ads popping up on Facebook and in a cinema. You see, so when I go, I don't know how it is in Australia, but in here, if you go to see a movie in a cinema, so the movie, if it starts five, it means it actually starts 5:25 or so, because you have about 10 minutes or so for commercials. another 10 minutes or so for trailers.
Yep.
And then what they started to do, these cheeky cunts, is another after the trailers are over, used to be movie starts. Great. Now, few more commercials for you because you're already sitting here, so might as well just feed you a bit more commercials. And a lot of them are Royal Army needs you. Royal Army is recruiting right
Mhm.
now. And it's been like this for over like last 2 years. And I'm like, fuck, this is, yeah, Royal Army's been recruiting a lot. And obviously with all
Oh,
Russia and Ukraine and, you know, potentially now like many things are happening in the world, like Israel, Palestine, Palestine, all that business. And like, ah, okay. We are probably going someplace, aren't we? Just, not a great feeling.
yeah. Look, we haven't had that specific of ads, but we
Hmm.
constantly, every single time I go to the movies ever, this is like for the last decade, we
Hmm.
have army ads, and they make me like irrationally angry
Yeah.
because I hate those ads so much because I'm just like, oh yeah, sign up for a life full of PTSD and
Hmm.
trauma. Like, what are you talking about? And especially the way they frame it is like, have you always wanted to be an engineer? Join
Yes.
the army. I'm just like, shut up. No. Like, I hate the way they frame it as like, this is the way you can achieve your dream. It's like, no, it's not. Are you kidding me right now? I know people who have been across the Army, Air Force, and the Navy. I
Hmm.
also, once upon a time, was a cadet myself in high school because it was like good for your transcripts or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, oh my God, no, that is not what it's like. It's so bad to be in the army. Being in the army is like you have to really want to do it, or
Hmm.
it's just the most intense, like rigorous, awful place that will just, even if you don't go to battle, you'll still get traumatized in some way, shape, or form. And it angers me because every single time I go to, it's like they pay for ads before every single movie. So they
Hmm.
like that must be their biggest source. Because the other thing is nobody watches TV anymore. So it's not like you're getting ads on TV,
Yeah.
or free to air TV. So it's the movies. And so yeah, it's either most of the time it's the army, but sometimes it's Air Force or Navy. And I always find them like I'm so annoyed, but I also find them funny because I'm just like, you're not convinced. Nobody's ever watched one of these ads and been like, you know what? I do want to be a teacher. I'll
Hmm.
become a naval officer. That's a great idea. Especially when you're in the Navy, you have to spend 6 months in like a submarine.
Hmm.
Nah, nah. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. I'm not
No.
doing that.
No.
6 months in a submarine, and they're so small and like
Yeah.
claustrophobic.
Yes.
Like, absolutely not. It's not happening.
I forgot to mention exactly the same,
Yeah.
those are the same angles, those ads are. So there's like the more, I guess, boy tailored ad where it's like, oh, you need to use your brains. You need to, we don't
Mhm.
shoot people. We are using your brains. You
Yeah.
are the best out of the best. Or there's this nice girl like, oh, when can you start? And like, she's like engineer in the army. And it's like, see,
Yeah.
look, we hire girls now. We also want girls now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay,
Yeah. Yeah.
feminism.
Feminism. No,
And I'm like,
that's not
let's
true.
kill some people. Yes.
Exactly. That's what I mean. At the end of the day, it's like it's to just to kill people. It's like, and for what? We're not even well, we might be in World War III soon, which is a whole other thing because I'm like, I mean, we all know World War III is not going to go for long, right? Like it'll end very quickly and then we'll all die because of nukes. So,
Apparently now, I've been told, I don't know if this is true, but it's by a guy who knows quite a lot. And he said, like, we actually don't have that many nukes, like actual armed nukes to
oh,
annihilate everybody. However, obviously, if you are strategic about where you launch them, you pretty much will collapse the entire civilization. So,
yeah.
like, not
Well, that's the thing. We're either going to
everybody.
end up in the apocalypse or
Yes.
dead.
Yes. So no, like if you knock out London, you're easily wiping out like 10 million people like instantly, and obviously over the course of several months after the radiation poisoning, all of that. You
Yeah.
know, so it's
Well,
such
what's
a
funny
huge
is that
topic.
I might be okay because we're just so far. I think the only nukes that can actually reach us
Hmm.
are friendly nukes, like ones that wouldn't target us, supposedly.
You mean like
That's what
America?
Yeah, like Americans, the English, that sort of thing. Like none of the ones that actually would hit us would be the ones that would be launched at us, if that makes sense. Um,
I wouldn't
but
hold my breath. Like, let's say Donald
well, yeah,
wins.
they might just kill everyone. But it's like,
Imagine Donald
yeah.
winning again, and then and then there'll be a conflict, and Australia will be like, you know what, fuck you, Donald, we're not helping you. And then I was like, okay, terminated with his fucking red
Well, the
button.
thing is that we kind of have to do whatever England wants to do. We don't actually get a say in anything. So
Same.
that's not, we're too small of a country. That's why we're not a republic. Because for years, people have wanted us to be a republic and not be part of the monarchy. But it's like, dude, there's only 25 million of us. We don't have enough. We don't have enough anything. So we can't be a republic. I mean, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that's the messaging that we've been given. So,
Girl,
that's
the
going to be the
same.
same with
Like you're
yeah,
talking to a
that's going to be
Scottish
the
person.
same. Yeah, exactly. It's literally the same. And so, but because we're so far away from everything and we are so few people, I think, especially because where I am is the bottom of Australia. So
Hmm.
I think there are ones that could hit like Australia, but it would only hit the top.
Yeah,
So maybe like I would end up dying of cancer, but I don't know if I'd die immediately.
yeah.
So,
What a
yeah,
cheery thought.
I know. No.
No, but like honestly, like we are again ruled by the English as well to a
Mm,
large extent. Not all the extent, but to a large extent. So like again, like I was actually here during the Scottish independence referendum in 2014.
mm. Oh, wow.
And
Yeah, I remember that.
uh-huh, 55 to 45.
Right before Brexit. I feel
Exactly. And
like that
this
would have been very different if you guys knew about Brexit.
exactly my point. Exactly my
Yeah.
point. Because like I was quite new here, right? So there was
Mm,
2014, so I've only been here at the time for 3 years. So I
mm,
talked to many Scottish people I used to work with and go to school with about this. And many Scottish people would vote for it, for the independence, and many Scottish people would vote against it with
mm,
a variety of different reasons. However, the one big one seemed to be Scottish people actually love, or most of them at least, they love and
mm,
appreciate foreigners like myself, because back then I didn't have British passport. Now I do. Now I am a citizen. And because they understand their economy would have been fucked had they managed to actually evict all the foreigners. That's about million plus people through different industries. So especially NHS, which is the health service, that's already collapsing as it is, or that already is struggling as it is. So that's why every single time there's a new thing about, oh, let's see how many people can we limit coming here this time, and there's always exception for NHS people, NHS workers, doctors, nurses. They can come in any point because we are fucking struggling. But anyway, the yeah, so it was quite close, 55-45%. However, if we had we known about Brexit, that was looming behind the corner. However, nobody fucking thought for a second England would be like, you know what? Yeah, fuck off. You know what? You know what? Let's send the big middle finger to the Europe. Yeah, I guarantee you. I pretty much guarantee you this would have gone the other way, and Scotland would have been independent, well, for a while now. It's
Oh yeah, absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. Like I think everyone was like assumed that like Brexit wouldn't happen. It's like that'd be such a stupid decision. Why would you do it? Don't you ever discount the power of racism.
it's not like it was only about, not even 2 percentile, which is like it should have never been a public referendum, because again, they were fed a lot of lies, which we now know for certain were lies. So, but yeah, you cannot mention it because people get upset.
Yeah, still because they're still mad. I'm
Yeah,
still mad and it doesn't affect me.
true.
So
No,
but
since
it's just
now,
yeah.
since
Mm.
since we solved all the world's problems, I think we're doing
Yes,
quite
I think
well.
so.
I think that
Yes,
we
I
did
think we've done pretty well,
yeah,
pretty well.
just I don't want to pat ourselves on back too much, but hey, I let's play a quick game of this or that, where I give you
Okay.
two questions or two options,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you tell me which one you would rather.
Let's
So,
do it.
Alice, big party or small gathering?
Small gathering.
Nice. So just something
Mm.
with the friends, family,
I
or
just think you get more like interaction and quality time.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
all so you're all about quality, not quantity.
Yeah. Well, also, I feel like whenever you go to a large party, it's fun for like an hour or
Mhm,
two. And
mhm.
then as I've gotten older, I've been like, I want to go home and read.
Yeah,
So I want to go home and watch a movie.
same.
Yeah.
We are kind of boring, but also same. So for you, I think this will be interesting. TV shows or movies?
Movies, which is very
Oh,
interesting. I know I'm such a
hmm.
television person, and I watch so much television
Yep, yep.
because ultimately it's storytelling for me, which sounds
Hmm.
so wanky, but like it really is the idea of escaping into a world. That's why fantasy is my favorite genre of all time of everything.
Yes.
But escaping into a new world, a new story, is just something like that cannot be replicated in my mind. But I still, nothing quite touches the magic of the movies. And I
Hmm.
think part of it has to do with the rewatchability, because even a long movie isn't going to take as long as, say, an entire TV show to create that emotional effect again. So,
Yeah.
if I really want to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, I still remember going to the movies. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time now,
Yeah.
if not my favorite movie of all time now.
Nice.
Um, and I remember being in the theater and like going in and watching it, and I didn't know anything going in, which I think is the best way to consume it if anyone
Yes.
listening has never watched it before. And it somehow touched, every aspect of film that I adore. And I just remember being literally starry-eyed and then also crying and laughing and being tense. And, you know, on top of that, going to see Avengers Endgame in a
Hmm.
cinema packed with people, or Spider-Man No Way Home,
Hmm.
it's just not something you can replicate. Even when you watch a TV show and it's like a big moment, like watching, for example, Battle of the Bastards for Game
Yeah.
of Thrones back when everyone still loved it. Like it was really exciting and really good, but ultimately, even if you have a watch party, that's only a few people. And
Hmm.
there's something about watching a movie in any context, which to me can never. And I had to think about this because recently, even on the Sif Pop podcast, we had that conversation as to like, has TV overcome cinema? And immediately I was like, oh, yeah, it's like prestigious now. It's a better way to tell
Yeah.
stories. That was my immediate thought. But then when we started talking about it and I was actually thinking about it, there is just something about it that cannot be touched. Like, I
Hmm.
just think, I've always said in like 25 years or something, sure, maybe redo the Harry Potter movie so that you can do as a TV show, so you can include all the stuff that was cut out. But I just don't think it would have had the same effect that
Hmm.
it did, where it literally became generation defining if it had A, remained a book series, or B, been a TV show.
Yeah.
Same with Lord of the Rings. I really love the Rings of Power TV show, but
Hmm.
there's something about the movies which somehow, like, the last one swept the Oscars for good
Yes.
reason, because it was a magnitude of a moment. And I just think that there's certain things like that which you cannot replicate in television. And so that's my very long answer to your quick game question.
That's a very eloquent answer. No, that's a very eloquent. I love that. Honestly,
Mm,
great. So,
mm.
tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Is that
I'm
another
not a tea.
stereotype? Is there another stereotype? Because I know there's another. Is it a stereotype that Australians
Yeah.
are really into coffee, and there's like a big coffee culture in
Well,
Australia?
I have a double stereotype working for me because I'm Italian
Oh,
and
damn.
Australian. And
Espresso.
but I literally like, yeah, well that's the thing. Good coffee comes from, I mean, like I'm sure Colombians and all that
Yes.
would argue, but really the coffee culture the reason why Melbourne, it's not Australia, it's Melbourne that
Okay.
has the best
Okay.
coffee in the
Melbourne.
world.
Melbourne.
And the reason is because a lot of Italians, specifically from central Italy and northern Italy,
Hmm.
have immigrated to Melbourne. So where a lot of southern Italians went to America during the 50s and 60s, a lot of northern and central Italians came to Australia.
Okay.
And so there's a huge, just in general, Italian culture in Melbourne, but there's also the coffee culture. Like so many Italians came here and introduced this idea of coffee culture and food culture to Australia and Melbourne. And so some of the best baristas in the world, some of the best coffee in the world is like every time I go outside of Melbourne and I get a coffee, I'm disappointed, basically, except for when I went to Italy. Like,
Okay.
and so I am very particular about my coffee. Like I make my coffee every single morning. I have a cappuccino. I make it myself. And, my partner will be like, oh, let's go out and buy a coffee and walk around. And I'll be like, or he'll be like, I'm going to go out and buy a coffee. And then, we can, and I'll be like, no, I want to make my own and drink it here. And it's only Lavazza brand because
Oh,
Victoria is dog shit. But that's a little tidbit for you. But no, I'm not a tea drinker. I think everyone, or at least every girl I know at some point has a tea like moment.
Yes.
And like that we have a franchise here. I don't know if it's global. It's called T2. And it's basically it's a very famous, at least as far as I know, Australian brand, which basically
Hmm.
does, different teas, and it's like
Okay.
got lots of stores and stuff. And
Hmm.
everyone has a T2 phase where you go and you get, and it's like all these different kinds of teas. And I had my T2 phase, but I'm never in the mood for tea. Like I have peppermint tea in
Hmm.
my house right now. I literally haven't opened the box because I like the idea of tea. I really do,
Yeah.
but I don't ever drink it. So yeah, except for when I'm like going for high tea. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Then
Hmm.
if I'm going for high tea, I'll have tea. But that's pretty much it's very rare.
Yeah.
Unless the only other time I consume tea is when I'm going somewhere and they only have instant coffee or tea available. I will
Hmm.
take the tea because
Hmm.
instant coffee is disgusting and shouldn't exist.
True.
So there's my
Same.
other
Yes.
caveat.
100%. And also, the only other time I consume tea is when I'm sick. So, like tea
Yeah,
with
yes, when
lemon,
I'm sick.
honey, that's
Correct.
usual
Yeah,
stuff.
lemongrass and ginger, chamomile. That's my, yeah, 100% is when I'm sick. And that's because you're also not supposed to drink coffee when you're sick, even though I still
Yes.
do sometimes.
Nice. Money or free time?
Free time.
Nice.
I
Okay.
mean, that was me being instinctual because in my head I'm like, but if you had all the money, I think look, this is a conversation I've had me and my partner have had for many years now, which is this idea of like ambition, and I think also it's a bit of a generational thing where
Hmm.
growing up you had all these lofty dreams and like you wanted to be the best. And I'm not saying that, we're not achieving them or anything nowadays, but I think that used to be the most important thing was being a girl boss or a go-getter.
Yes.
And having grown up, and I think as well because we've gone through the pandemic and all of that, like we really have been like, when I get to the end of my life, sorry, one moment. I think I swallowed air weird.
That's
Um,
fine.
when I get to the end of my life, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm really, really glad that I worked, 20 hours every day, or I worked 3 hours unpaid overtime, or
Hmm.
I'm really glad that, I worked full stop. I'm
Yeah.
going to be like, I'm really glad that I made these connections, that I have family, that I have friends, that I have memories and experiences. And especially because I feel like a lot of people in my generation, so I'm a millennial, I guess, but I'm a zillennial technically. That is a new
Ooh.
generation that's been created, which is basically people born between 91 and I think it's like 2001 or something, like 1999, 2001. And it's basically because this in between sort of, I'm 94, and it's like this in between sort of age group where, similar to what you were saying, it's like we remember not having the internet, but we also are fully literate in it. And like,
Yes.
we're in this in between where we can kind of relate to millennials and kind of relate to Gen Z, but not fully relate to either.
Hmm.
And part of that is, I think, this idea of being emotionally burnt out because we're so tired of living through unprecedented history. Like it's
Yes.
like the joke of like, I'm so sick of living through historical events. Can I just rest for a bit?
Multiple
Which I
times.
know that, yeah, which I'm like, I'm sure people would tear apart or whatever. But the idea, it's like, there's always something happening. Cost of living crisis right now. Like, a
Hmm.
few years ago, it was the global financial crisis. There, in between that, we've had like
Pandemic.
COVID and 9/11. Everything has happened. And
Yes.
it's just kind of made you be like, wow, why am I working for someone else? And also because of COVID and all that, there was the big layoffs that were
Oh
happening, and
yeah.
it really just showed how much companies don't care about. I mean, this sounds so cynical, but it's like the company you work at, especially if it's a big company, they don't care about. They don't give a fuck about you.
Yes.
So why would you give them more than you are contractually obliged to? Like,
Hmm.
I will do my work and I will do it to the best of my ability. And I will do good work because I know I'm good at what I do. But if it hits 5 o'clock, I'm logging off. Like, I'm not giving you a moment more of my time. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, there's going to be flexibility around all that, whatever. But like, at the crux of it is, especially when I came out of university, in my first job, I did and this is really where my moment, my epiphany moment. In my very first job, I was working in events, and I was working like every day, 9:30 to most days 6:30. Then I would train home, which was like an hour. Then I'd cook food, cook dinner, and then like by the time I had maybe like an hour of my day before I had to go to bed, and
Mm-hmm.
then I would be working. Like I would always get calls from my boss. I once answered my phone, my boss, out of hours. I was not working.
Yeah.
It was like a Sunday. I got a phone call from my boss and I picked up while I was in the shower. And I then was like, hey, I'm in the shower, which is already heinous. But I
Yeah.
was like, I'm in the shower. I'll call you back. And she kept me on the phone to tell me whatever task she wanted me to do. And I was just like hanging out of the shower with my phone and stuff. And anyway, it kept going and kept overworking for minimum wage at this point because it was my very first job. It was nothing. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to survive on it if I had that money now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in that job, after that first year, there was a point where I was so stressed. I started crying every day at work and I
Mm-hmm.
basically had an emotional breakdown. And it helped me have an epiphany to be like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? This isn't worth my mental capacity,
Yeah.
or my emotions or anything. And so that's when I started being like, I'm going to work to live, but I'm never going to live to work. It's not going
Yes.
to happen. And so that's kind of, again, the long-winded answer to that quick answer.
No, but I 100% agree with you, especially many people, even here, due to COVID, have realized, like, oh,
Mm,
my priorities actually should be someplace else. So I
mm,
know of many people who cut down. So instead of working full time, which full time here is, 5 days a week or 37 hours
mm,
or whatever, they would scale back if they could to like 4 days a week or 3 days a week.
mm,
Because they rather would survive with enough cash to just pay for everything and still have a nice life
mhm,
than to be like, oh, you know what, I need to be a millionaire or whatever.
mm,
No, actually, if you are comfortable, like, why not scale down a bit? Like,
mm.
and I think this is the kind of, yeah, we are the generation where that's stepping out of the or trying to step out of the rat race. Because yeah, it's
Mm.
always been the case, like you work hard, you retire, then you die, and then in your
Yeah.
retirement, that's when you enjoy the life. And we see that's not been the case for many people, even in Europe,
Yes.
where we have like the safety net and everything, and like it's much better than like, let's say in America. We've seen still that's not been the case for many people.
Mm.
And yeah, so I feel like we are the first kind of generation that tries to do things like that, and that's what many companies are now panicking, like, oh, nobody wants to work anymore, and just this generation is lazy. And like, are we lazy, or do we just have our priorities differently? Just yeah, so it is insane. Like, I totally agree with everything you just said. It's again, but I think COVID has many people reevaluating their life and
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, absolutely. No, no,
uh,
no. I think that's 100% right because you're right. It's like we would also the generation is similar to what I was saying, where it's like with the internet thing, but it's also the generation that was promised if you just go to uni and get a job, you're
yes.
set. But we're also the first generation to realize to not be able to realize that as a reality. Like,
And because of that inflation, going
well,
to
yeah,
uni doesn't actually mean anything because everyone's gone to uni. Before, like I
yeah,
remember 20, 30 years ago,
yes.
if you had a bachelor's degree, let alone like master's, oh, you were like one of the few. But nowadays, fucking throw a rock and you hit five bachelors.
Well,
If you,
exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
just
Well,
like,
growing up, all my mum would always just tell me, just get a degree and you'll be
yes,
fine. Get a
yes,
degree and you'll be fine. Get a degree. And then, because they didn't, but then somehow so many of her generation didn't get a degree. Now, this isn't the case for my mum, but for a lot of people of her generation, didn't get a degree and somehow still afforded a giant house that is now worth millions of dollars. Like,
yeah,
it's just so frustrating because it's like there's literally nothing I can do about that.
mm-hmm,
And so I think yeah, it kind of going back to it,
mm-hmm,
um, it's basically like, well, fine, I'll win the battles I can, which in this case
yes,
is to work what I'm contractually obliged to and nothing else.
and enjoy your life. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
So, honesty or other people's feelings.
Oh. See, I think instinctively I want to say honesty. That was the
Mm-hmm.
first answer in
Mm-hmm.
my mind. And as soon as you said that, I thought honesty, but then I was like, but I think that, and this is also very interesting in regard, well, I hope it's very interesting in regards to my cultural background versus Toby, my partner's cultural background, because I'm like, obviously we've talked about, I'm Italian, very, very Italian, wherein like my mother and I will have constant arguments, but they're
Yeah.
not arguments. Like
Yeah.
from the outside, they may be, but that's just how we talk. But I can be honest with her at all times. And I
Mm-hmm.
am. When she annoys me,
Mm-hmm.
when she pisses me off, I tell her constantly. Um, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But Toby, he grew up in a very British household where
Yeah.
no one ever talked about their feelings. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very like, to the point, and it's just, I remember when he first came over to my house when I lived with my mum, he would he was shocked. He was like, "Why are you and your mum fighting? Is everything okay?" And I was like, "We're not fighting. We're just talking about dinner." But
Yeah.
it's like he was just, and that's kind of exacerbated into this understanding that, especially Europeans, like we just kind of say how we feel at that moment, which is
Mm-hmm.
also why I'm very quick to anger, but I'm also very quick to forgive. So like if we have a fight, if Toby and I have a fight, like I'll be very angry, I'll be very defensive, whatever, we'll get onto it. I'll forget about it like
Yes.
a week later, right? He will still bring stuff up because he'll remember it from like 2 years ago. And I'm not saying in a way of like holding a grudge. It's like it's affected him so much that he still remembers it.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely can't remember half the stuff he brings up because I'm like, did it, is it going to affect me long term? Who cares? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
forget about it. And I just think that's a very European way where it's like, as soon as something annoys me, I will tell you. As soon as I think something, I will tell you.
Yeah.
And it might hurt, it might be awful that first moment. But as let's talk about it now. And I think that's why I really, really dislike passive aggressiveness for that reason. I'm like, just
Mm-hmm.
tell me what you mean. Rather than hold it in or like try to dance around the topic or whatever. And so, yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'd still prefer honesty to sparing feelings.
See, this is the thing, right? Like exactly the same. My girlfriend, she's not European, so
Mm.
she always calls me European Lucas,
Yeah.
or because like I'm the honest person. Like I try to
Mm.
be like gentle about being honest, but I always have exactly your philosophy about it. I would rather have a fight where we actually talk about things openly than
Mm.
tiptoe around, around the issue and we both are fucking passive aggressive to each other for a week. Fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
No. I would
Mm.
much rather, if we need to, like I would hope not, but if we need to get into shouting competition, we can get there, and like in 5 minutes, we hopefully will be fine. But
Yeah.
like I would much rather be have that and have it out in the open, and let's try to
Yeah.
actually talk about it like two adults, rather than let's tiptoe around the issue for a week or two and let's make our lives miserable and toxic. You know what? Let's not do that.
Yeah,
So,
and I think it's also related to going back to what we are saying
mhm,
around work. Like I've always hated this idea of like it being a faux pas to
mhm.
share or mention your salary or ask other people how much
No.
money they make. Because I think like who is that protecting? I don't understand why that's an embarrassment. I've never understood why that's an embarrassment because I'm like, especially if we work at the same company, we should all know how much
Yes.
we're each making because otherwise that's exactly how gender pay gap or just in general unfair wages and all of that stuff gets away with it because no one
Mhm,
you're not meant to talk about money. You're not meant to talk about money. It's like why?
mhm.
That seems silly. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you ask me how much I make, I'll tell you. It's
Exactly.
just so very important question coming up. So get ready.
Okay. I'm ready.
Ninjas or pirates?
Oh, ninjas. Def.
Why?
I again, immediately in my head, I thought ninjas, but I was like, oh, but it would be fun to be a pirate.
Hmm.
Hygiene is a very big one. I just the life of a pirate is so it looks so much fun when you watch like One Piece or Pirates or whatever,
Hmm.
but my God, does it look unhygienic and like you're on, it just and also just because you're a pirate does not mean you're necessarily specialized in any skill. While if you're a ninja, I would assume that you could be as hygienic as you want. And two, and also because you're masked, you could just pretend to be rich and you'll be fine and like live in a hotel and whatever. And number two, to be a ninja, you'd have to be extremely skilled at the fighting arts. And that seems way more fun.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Free will or destiny?
Oh my God. I mean, free will or destiny? I think free will. I think free will
Okay.
because to me, destiny just means like as it sounds, like it's pretty
Hmm.
obvious, but you don't have any choice in your future. So then
Hmm.
to that point, what is the point,
Hmm.
right? Like if everything is predetermined, then why try?
Well, you were just that's the thing, isn't it? Everything is predetermined. So effectively,
Mm,
that makes you a puppet, really, in this kind of
exactly.
theater of a show we call life.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think I've always not vibed and eventually lapsed from religion for that
Hmm.
reason. Because I'm like, I really dislike this idea of like, oh, it's all in God's plan. And I'm like, well, that's a stupid plan then. Like, he should have done a plan B
Yeah.
because plan A isn't working very well.
But you know what the people would say? Well, you don't understand the God's plan then, because he is much
Yeah, yeah,
smarter.
yeah.
He has the plan that's all planned out for you, Alice. It will all work out in the end. You just don't see it
See, this
now.
is the equivalent of when I was talking to a friend today about how, like, when you're a kid,
Hmm.
you look at, like, so say you're 12, you then look at the 18-year-olds or the adults, and you're like, wow, I can't, well, look, they're so big. They know what they're doing. I can't wait to be that age. And then
Yep.
you reach that age, and you're just like, oh my God, it's all been a lie this whole time. I have no idea. People have kids at my age. Are you kidding me? I'm not mentally, emotionally, or fiscally prepared for any of that right now. So, yeah, I
Neither of
think
the
it's
above.
just to exactly. So I think it's honestly it's equivalent to that. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm sure that this is all part of a big plan and not just if there is, which I personally do not believe there is, but if there was some deity or whatever that's
Hmm.
designed all this, probably just like a 3-year-old toddler literally throwing shit at the wall.
I think that's the big part of when we
Mm,
become adults. I think that's the defining moment for everybody when they
yeah.
realize, oh shit. So it's not like reach this magical age of 18 or
Yeah.
21 or whatever, and
And
suddenly I've have it
yeah.
all figured out. No, everybody, even people who are 60, are still faking it because they are
Yes.
just doing the best they can. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of mindset where you realize, holy fuck, nobody knows much, and they are just
No.
going through life doing the best they can with what they've been given. And like,
Hmm.
holy fuck, that's kind of scary, but also kind of calming in a weird way. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so if I don't do this by this age, just it's fine. It's my path, and
Yeah.
their path is different. So it's, whoa, yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm turning 30 this year and I'm having a bit of an existential crisis about it because I'm like, I feel like the 20s are your practice years. And then when you
Yes.
turn 30, it's like, okay, time to be a real adult. And I'm just like, no,
Hmm.
no. What are you talking about? Absolutely not. I don't know what that means. I'm still practicing. And I think that's just going to be the rest of our lives.
I'm turning 33 this year. So what
Oh,
we
there you
call
go.
it, like, what is it? We call it in Czech, we call it like the Jesus age because that's
Yeah.
when
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Jesus
Yep. Of
died at
course.
33. So, dangerous age to
Oh,
be.
of course.
But yeah, so the last question, and I have a feeling I know the answer to it, but I'll ask it
Mm,
anyway.
okay.
Would you rather time travel twice or be able to teleport infinite amount of times?
Teleport.
I
Teleport. Are you kidding?
I
Like,
knew it.
why? What? Why would I choose? First of all, where would I time travel to?
Mhm.
Twice. That would be worth it. And
Mhm.
it depends on also what kind of time travel you believe in. Do you
Yeah.
believe in the time travel where it's the Back to the Future time travel? Or do you believe in the like 12 Monkeys time travel? Because if it's the 12 Monkeys time travel, why would you ever time travel
Yes.
if
It's
not
all
just for
loop.
observational purposes? Which
Yeah.
is like, I'll just read a history book.
Mhm.
Do you know every time I get asked what superpower would you have, it'd be flying because
Mhm.
that's just teleporting, but fun.
Yes.
And this is assuming that I can fly faster than I can walk and also in a way that's not going to like rip my skin off or my
Yes.
eyes aren't going to get glassy or anything like that. But yeah, are you kidding? If I could just be like, I want to be, think about it this way, never have to pay for an international flight ever
Exactly.
again.
Yep. Yeah.
Like every time I want to go to work, I just have to wait till the second before I have to be at work, and then I can tell. You can no more commuting unless you want
Mm-hmm.
to, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe the magic of that can come back into it. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely teleport, absolutely.
The time travel bit would only come in handy, I think, if you were to, let's say, visit the wee Alice, let's say
Mm, mm.
2008, and
Oh, and
tell
give all the
her,
answers.
no, not even all the answers, just tell her, hey, get all the money you can, see this
Yeah,
thing called Bitcoin. You don't
Yeah.
understand this. You will not understand it, but fucking buy shit ton of them and don't touch them
Yeah.
until 2016. Don't sell them. Don't sell most of them until 2021. Thank me later. Cheers, Alice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so many
Yeah.
people could be like, "Oh yeah, how can I make so much money in one go?" Nowadays, like how Back to the Future used to be, "Oh, bet on
Mm,
sports, have the sports
mm,
almanac."
mm.
Modern answer is, "Oh, only had I known about bitcoins in 2008."
On that note, though, if I can teleport, I could just
Mhm.
teleport into a bank vault.
See, that's the other thing, but also like because there's different
I'll
rules,
just
isn't
wear a
there?
ski mask,
Mhm.
teleport in. How long am I going to need? I just grab a few K at a time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
because I know some movies have played around with the idea where like they try to limit teleporting to only
mm,
the locations you've actually been to before or because
mm,
how do you
mm.
know where like there's a wall and you don't teleport in the
Yeah,
middle of a
yeah.
wall? No, but
Sure, sure.
no, like to be fair, teleporting would probably be mine as well. Just
Yeah,
just the places I want to visit, like
yeah.
America,
Well, that's the
Australia,
thing. It's
Japan.
like even then, I probably would still pick even if it wasn't like because I should say I'm not playing. If I got teleportation, I wouldn't actually rob anything mainly because who can be bothered
Allegedly.
doing all that planning? No, allegedly, yes,
Yeah.
but actually, yeah. Because again, I think for me, the fact that I wouldn't have to ever pay for an international flight ever again, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Are you
Yes.
kidding me? That's like the biggest expense of any travel ever
Yeah.
done, taken care of forever. Like,
And then
yeah,
you can use all that
especially.
money you save on that,
Yeah,
on like a nice hotels.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And again, if you could theoretically teleport anyway, you could just figure out what hotel room's going to be empty for the night and just live in that.
See, like, so you go from robbing a bank to not robbing a bank to like, visiting a hotel,
Yeah,
hotels like that.
yeah.
I like
I'll
I
just
like
do
them.
like wholesome crimes. They wouldn't hurt anyone.
The victimless crimes. Yes. No,
Exactly. Or
I
I'd
love the way
Robin
you
Hood it.
yes. You'd be
I
Alice
would
Hood.
steal from Jeff Bezos, I feel. I'd steal from billionaires.
You heard it
Like
here. You heard it here first, folks. Alice Hood is on the case, just stealing from Jeff Bezos.
I feel like if I get that power, I would use it to take money from billionaires. If that's going to be something I do, if I got angry enough, like yeah,
It's not like
that's
they
what
would
I would do.
notice. It's not like they would
They would
notice.
notice, and they also are the ones that deserve to have some money stolen. So there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire, folks. Millionaire,
Ooh.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Billionaire, there is not. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do agree with that. But speaking with that, we can now move to the Flix part of the podcast,
yes. Oh my goodness.
and let's
Yes. It's
talk
only
some
been two
movies.
hours.
Let's
Yeah, let's
look.
do
I've
it.
expected nothing less, and I'm so
Yeah,
happy. I'm
it's
very happy to
good.
talk to you because this is exactly what I expected. When I invited you over, and I'm not
Hmm.
disappointed. So
I'm glad. I'm glad.
So, Alice, what would you say is the last 5 out of 5 movie you would rate that I would consider new, anything 2020 onward?
So for all of these, I checked both my IMDb and Letterboxd to really try and determine what was the last one. And
Okay.
the last one for me was Barbie.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Because this is the other thing. I have a lot more stuff that's rated 10 out of 10 on like IMDb that on
Hmm.
Letterboxd is a 4.5 because you can't do half ratings on
Yeah.
IMDb.
Yeah.
And so, especially in recent years, I know I can be very specific about it. So, yes, Barbie, it's my favorite movie of the year so far. I mean, look, I'm very much looking forward to American Fiction, but I don't know if
Hmm.
it's going to take over.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think Anatomy of the Fall I've heard good things about, and Killers I don't think Killers of the Flower Moon is going to take it. So I think Barbie's going to end up being my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah.
It spoke to me on such a level that, again, similar to what I was saying with Everything Ever All at Once, like it was just like it was literally made for me. And
Hmm.
also like Little Women was my favorite movie of the year that came out. Like Greta Gerwig has had my number for a few years, and
Hmm.
I just love the way this movie is hilarious and fun, but also really meaningful. So
Hmm. Are you
I'm not
also in a
saying anything
camp?
new here.
Yeah. No. 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 It's your opinion, and that's new to me. But are you also in a camp that Greta and Margot both should have been nominated?
See, upset about Margot Robbie, but she wasn't going to win anyway, so I'm not
Hmm.
like super, upset about that. I'm furious about Greta Gerwig. I'm
Hmm.
furious. Like, do you know she's the only director to have had her three films nominated in her first three and never been nominated for best. Like, how does that happen? How
Yep.
how how does it? And especially this year, it got 8 nominations, which I will say I am more angry because of why I feel she wasn't nominated, but similarly angry to when Denis Villeneuve wasn't nominated for Dune Part One, because that was also nominated for a stupid amount of
And won.
Oscars and won a bunch of Oscars. And then, like, how do you get that many nominations across all those categories and then not get nominated for Best Director? Same with Barbie. That image, that is the most iconic. I don't care that it's not going to win Best Picture because
Hmm.
Oppenheimer's going to win.
Yeah.
Like, Barbenheimer wouldn't have happened if Barbie didn't come out. If Oppenheimer had just come out on its own and Barbie didn't exist, it would have just been another Christopher Nolan film, which is still a very good film. And I'm not
Hmm.
upset if it wins Best Picture of the Year or whatever. But like, Barbie was a triumphant film because
Hmm.
it proved a point. If you make a film in the female gaze for women, we will watch it and give it lots of money. It is,
Hmm.
I mean, this is something I've been passionate about for a long, long, long time, but it is an entire market that has never really been touched on by
Hmm.
Hollywood, because even quote unquote feminist movies a lot of the times have been made. There's a big difference between the male gaze and the female gaze. And I
Yes.
understand that it's difficult, especially if you're not into film, to understand it, or to, like, it sounds very wanky to say,
Hmm.
but as someone who A, studied film, B, has worked in film, and C, is a big cinephile, there is a difference. And you can tell because of how specifically men, and I'm not saying men in like a bad way, because my
Yeah.
partner has reacted in this way a lot, react to these films. So a good example, for example, is Promising Young Woman,
Oh
one of
yeah.
one of my favorite films, and again, one of my favorite of that year.
Hmm.
I loved it. My partner had a really big problems with it. And it's
Hmm.
like, he's not a bad guy and he's not like a quote unquote nice guy in that way either.
Yeah.
Obviously, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be with him if he was.
Hmm.
But like, it's because I think he could not fathom the female gaze this film was being told in, because he's only ever been presented things in the male gaze.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
when now that films are finally starting to be told in the female gaze, it is very much it's very difficult, and a lot of people are rejecting that, but Barbie is proving that even if you do that, you can still make a lot of money, and you
Yeah.
can still, which is all studios care about, let's be honest. Like,
Yes.
they care about, are you going to make a lot of money? And it's like, yes, the marketing for Barbie was genius, and that's a whole other conversation, but the fact of the
Hmm.
matter is, marketing can be really good, but if the film is terrible, it's not going to make that much money. And so the fact that it was the most successful film of the year, made the most amount of money, made a stupid amount of money,
Yep.
speaks for itself. And even if you take the money thing out of the context, the care behind the costumes, the production design, the script, like all of it. And obviously, yes, the directing, the
Hmm.
way this film can go between tones, like,
Hmm.
I think is masterful. And I am so, yes, to answer your question, I'm furious she's not nominated.
Hmm.
I haven't seen Zone of Interest yet, but I have a feeling that's the one I'd probably take out, because it looks like, having seen what I have seen of Zone of Interest, I feel like that's the one where I'm going to watch it and be like, I've seen this before. Why the hell is this nominated?
Okay. Okay. See, like this is exactly the why I like talking to you because and listening to you because we kind of sync up on a lot of things. And look, this is one of them when you mentioned that the Barbie movie got so many nominations and she didn't. I immediately thought of like Dune exactly the same. Not only like most of the things Dune or all of the things Dune won were technical. So the guy in charge of the technical achievement somehow
Yeah,
isn't nominated. So it doesn't make sense. And for
exactly.
Barbie, it doesn't also make sense because Greta Gerwig's been proving herself for well, yeah, 3 movies in a row. Like three
They've all
great
been nominated for
movies.
Best Picture, all
Yes.
three of them, and she's never gotten one director. Like, how? I just don't understand how that happens.
Yeah,
Like,
me neither. Me neither. And Promising Young Woman, by the way, also one of my favorite my favorite
mm,
movies of that year.
mm.
Amazing movie. Amazing
It
movie.
should have. I personally think it was better than Nomadland, which did win that year. But we
I
can't choose our
would
battles.
actually I would agree with that too, to be honest. I'm one of the few that actually really liked Nomadland because I know people are kind of mixed on it. I
Mm,
know people are like,
mm.
this is the okay movie. I kind of really liked it. because it spoke to different thing. But no, like my rating, yeah, I would definitely put it, Promising Young Woman above that, and Carey Mulligan,
Oh, well, she's
oof.
like, again, if I was the one to pick the Oscars this year, she would win Best Actress, Best
Well,
Lead Actress.
I'll
Like,
say she's by far the best thing about Maestro. Like
mm.
I like Brad. Look, Bradley Cooper seems like a nice dude. I've heard one too many interviews with him. He seems like a
Yeah,
genuinely nice dude. However, ever since he started to direct, he has been. I cannot shake the feeling he's like the kid in the class, that overachieving kid in the class who's just raising
yeah.
their hand. It's like, hey, I
I
know
get
all the
that.
answers. Fucking love
Yeah,
me, please. Please love me. I'm one of you.
yeah,
I'm one of you now. Please love me. Please give me that Oscar. Give me that Oscar. Give me that Oscar.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, dude, just chill the fuck out. We will like you
I
eventually,
ha
but
I have someone. I have a similar thought about someone else that I'll get into later
all
on.
right. I cannot wait to hear. I cannot wait to hear it. So, what is the last teen movie you would rate 5 out of 5 for the definition of the podcast? Anything between 2003 and 2019.
So the last one that I watched and rated 5 stars was Parasite.
Oh, what?
Uh,
Just
yeah, which is very interesting because I wasn't interested in that movie at all until I had to watch it for the Oscars when it was nominated. Because my housemate had seen it and he was like, "This was amazing," blah blah blah, and I was like, "Ugh, it looks so boring." Because the poster for some reason didn't give intense thriller,
yeah,
it,
yeah,
it
yeah.
gave like suburban family drama, and I was like, I am so uninterested. I'm not watching that.
Hmm.
And then obviously we Oscar nominated, so I'm like, all right, I'll watch it. Oh my God, that movie is masterful. It's
Yes, it
so
is.
good. It's so good.
It's
So,
it is like I've showed it to my girlfriend. Like I watched it once by myself, a second time with my girlfriend, and
mm.
we both loved it. She was like, "That's fucking intense." I was like, "I know, right?" And
Yeah.
funny enough, the first time I heard about Parasite was in the middle of summer, and this is gonna sound very weird, but stick with me. It was on a Pornhub podcast. So I'm listening. Yes, I know. I'm one of them people. No, because it's funny because it's
What do they
hosted.
talk about on the Pornhub? I'm just curious. I didn't know there
Well,
was one.
you wouldn't know. Like I think you're too wholesome to know. I'm not. Now, look, I'm trying to be very sex positive. So, and I also really
No,
like
I actually think it would be very interesting. Like if it's about just
it's
talking about like the
yes,
behind the scenes and that like
it's not.
I was like I assume it's not just a podcast of porn. That
No, no,
sounds
no,
like
no, 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 no,
a
no.
poor listening experience.
No,
But like,
It's hosted by Asa Akira, one of the most famous porn
oh yeah,
stars
no,
over
I
like
know her.
recent.
Well, I know of her. I don't know her
Yes,
personally.
but
Yeah.
well, me neither. But actually, I would love to because she seems like a genuinely great person to chill with, and she has this great vibe,
Mm,
and so she would invite mostly porn stars, obviously, to
mm.
and talk about not just porn, but their life, and basically kind of demystifying the idea that, hey, all the porn stars are dumb people who are addicted to cocaine or addicted to this,
Oh yeah,
and
I mean,
horrible
I definitely have
childhood.
not. I've not believed that for years. There's one of the most famous porn stars in the world right now. She went to my uni. She studied gender studies. What's her
Angela
name?
White?
What? Thank you. Yes, Angela White. Yeah, she
Oh,
went to
she's
Melbourne
great.
Uni. And she like I remember reading an article written by her in a magazine back when magazines were a thing.
Hmm.
No, I've always found it very fascinating. I don't like I think that it's silly to think about. I think porn is like a crazy industry. And if as long as it's not the like,
Yeah,
awful
yeah, yeah, yeah.
versions that but that just like everything else, every industry in
Yes.
the world, there's the awful. But like proper porn, like I mean, we're getting very sidetracked, but like it's a very interesting industry, and I think it is very. I love to hear about the experiences of people that work in them, or to watch movies on that, or whatever,
Hmm.
because it's like it's so interesting how everyone finds it to be so taboo and like, and it's just another job. But
Hmm.
and that mentality switch, I just think psychologically it's also very interesting. So
It
yeah, no,
also it
mm,
also sets a standard for movies
mm,
because I don't
yeah,
know if you remember, but there used to be
mm,
battle between Blu-ray and HD, what is it,
yeah.
HD DVD?
HD TV. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And porn
and
is the reason Blu-ray won. Yeah, I know that.
exactly
Well, I
because they
mean,
adapted very quickly.
all film and technology developments are as a result of porn or war.
Yes. Like
So,
internet. We have the
yeah,
internet.
well,
The basis
I'm
of it
pretty
was
sure I have to look this up so somebody
Mhm.
can fact check me, but I'm fairly certain the idea of the boom came from porn, like
Okay.
boom mics, because obviously you can't put a mic onto a porn
Yes.
actress.
Yes.
So, like, or a porn actor for that matter, where are you going to
Mhm.
put it? And so the boom was like a way of getting around it without, because, yeah,
Hmm.
without like, so that was one. I think that like certain sound and
Mhm.
lighting innovations are as a
Yes.
result of porn.
And
So,
again, like
yeah.
or now VR, it
Mm.
became massive the moment
Oh my God.
there was a
Yeah.
VR. Now there's a VR porn, which okay,
Yeah.
cool.
That sounds
But
so
anyway,
intense.
it is. No, like from what I heard, I don't have a VR head. But yeah, so just to go back, like this was the
Yeah.
first time I heard about Parasite
Mm.
because
Mm.
she had her husband, and just talked to her husband about life and stuff, and she
Mm.
mentioned that they watched Parasite and it was great, but also really creepy. And I was like, I had never heard of that movie. And ever
Right.
since then, everybody's like, well, Parasite's fucking amazing. And I was like, okay, I need to watch it. And then I watched it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then obviously, did blockbusters at the Oscars, just
Yeah.
became the history-breaking movie. So
And I
Parasite
think,
is a
was
great
it
choice.
like, this is an interesting conversation
Mhm.
to potentially like look into, I think, afterwards, but was it the first in the recent trend of the Eat the Rich movies? Was that the first one? Did it like, I feel like it might have kicked off that
I think
trend,
it
or
was
if not
definitely
been in that, in the early, like in the early group, as it were.
no, I think definitely was because it was before the pandemic because it is
Mm,
2019 movie. Because obviously there
mm.
was a big year, 2022 was a big year for
Yeah.
Eat the Rich movie, like with the Triangle Sadness and like the
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
two movies I'm blanking out on right now.
Oh, there's like the menu and there's
Menu,
Ready or
yes.
Not and
Yes.
yeah, there's so many of them. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it was definitely the first one that like touched it on a very basic but also subtle level. And it's and
Mm,
now and as when you rewatch it, you notice tiny details like the separation of
mm.
everything, like how everything is framed, how the first scene has the table set up for what is it, 8 people, even though there are
Yeah.
technically not 8 people in the house you know of.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
those tiny
yeah.
details when you rewatch it, it's
Yeah.
like, fuck, it's a masterpiece. And I cannot wait for his new movie that's apparently been delayed now.
Mickey's 17. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't have a date at the moment, so
No,
we'll
well, they
see.
had a date, a provisional date was like March, but I just heard, just seen like a week ago that's been delayed indefinitely. And I don't know why.
Oh no.
Yeah, because like it was provisionally, it was like March this year. And for reasons, I don't know why, it's been delayed. And I'm like,
Maybe they're just
fuck.
delaying it till award season. I'm
I would
hoping
imagine
that's.
so. I would imagine
I
so.
hope so. That's fine. They can do
Yes, yes. We need
that.
to give him more. We need to give him more.
Yeah,
That man
exactly.
deserves all the praise. So
Yep.
anyway, about praising, what's the
Mm-hmm.
last adult movie that you would rate
Mm.
5 out of 5? Anything in between 2002 and 1975.
So this was an interest. This was one where I had to use both my letterbox and my IMDb to figure out because I found all the ones I had rated that like that high,
Hmm.
and then I had to find which one I think I'd seen last. Because
Okay.
obviously there's a lot of like Disney and that sort of thing, but I definitely would have seen. So the last one I remember watching this in uni was the Iron Giant.
Oh, nice.
Mm. I was going through and I still am, I've made a list of my movie backlog that I'm very slowly working my way through.
Hmm.
And Iron Giant was one back in uni when I had God knows how much time on my hands to just sit around and watch movies.
Hmm.
And I obviously had heard about it for years and years and years and years. Never got around to it, didn't watch it as a kid, so I didn't have the nostalgia, but it's still beautiful. Like it's
Yes.
just I think it first of all it holds up exceptionally well even though it's a 1999 film.
Hmm.
And it's I miss can we please bring back hand-drawn animation? Like
Oh,
I really hope that the awful performance of Wish makes Disney recalibrate some decisions. And
hmm.
one of those decisions I would love for them to go back on is the idea of computer generated animation and for them to go back to hand drawn animation because they have Pixar for CG. So, like, anyway, it's so beautiful. Like, it's so
Yeah.
beautiful when it's done well. And Iron Giant is such a great story and great metaphors and themes are explored in it. And it's one of Vin Diesel's best performances.
By far,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
No. You know what's funny? I've also just watched. I didn't grow up with that movie. I've only watched it for the first time, like I want to say 3 years ago.
Mm,
So
mm.
I was almost scared because you know how you hear about, a lot about one movie, and then
Yeah.
you haven't seen it, and you finally get around watching it, and you're like, what if I don't like it? What if, there's
Yeah.
almost like a pressure of like, oh, I know this is many people's like either favorite
Yeah.
movie or one of the top ones, and like it's been praised. And as you said, it holds up beautifully. It looks beautiful, and also it knows where to end. It's a short
Mm,
movie, and like, there's an argument to be made that many movies don't know when to end and how to end, and this movie knows perfectly well when to end.
mm.
Just
Yeah.
no,
Agreed.
it's a
Very
great
well
one.
made.
It's a great.
Nobody ever remake it. Don't touch it. Leave it.
Oh, that's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it will happen, and because it's Disney, it
Yep.
is what it is. So, what is the last old movie you would rate 5 out of 5 for this purpose of this debate? Anything older than 1974?
Uh, I just realized that the original answer I wrote down was wrong,
Okay.
because it was 1986. But that's okay because I have another answer.
Okay.
Because this is the other thing. When I go back and I watch these old films,
Hmm.
a lot of times, even if I really love, like, not really love them, even if I really like them, they don't quite hit 5 stars. So that's where I was struggling, is that I had a lot that were like fours, fours and a half, but
Hmm.
only like three that would have worked in this category. And now it turns out maybe only one or two, but it's okay because it's one of my favorite films of all time and it's from 1946. So I know it
Ooh.
counts. And that is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh,
It's my
classic.
favorite Christmas movie. It is the movie I watch every single Christmas. And it is every year. I've watched it every year. And I'm, turning 30 this year. And I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, sure, maybe I didn't watch the first few years of my life, but
Yes.
let's say at least a few years of, and I still like love it. I still love the story, which is so funny again because I, said I wasn't religious, but
Hmm.
and it is a movie very much steeped in this idea of religion, but it's kind of using religion as like a magic thing, which is
Yes.
quite fun. But even all of that aside, I just love that it's the beautiful story behind it that's now been redone God
Hmm.
knows how many times.
Hmm.
Um, and Jimmy Stewart is just excellent. He's
Yeah.
so great.
It's hard to add anything about It's a Wonderful Life, so I'll just say
Yeah.
signed, sealed, approved, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Yes, it's a great
Yeah.
movie. It is one of those classics. I don't rewatch it every Christmas, but I do need to
Mm.
watch it with my. I don't think my girlfriend's seen it, so I need to introduce that movie
Oh
to
my
her.
gosh, you
I
absolutely do.
Yeah. See, I failed as a cinephile boyfriend, so I need to. I
It's okay.
need to.
It is
Correct that
black and
mistake.
white as well, so as long as you warn her with that, it'll be fine.
sh- she has no problem with black and white movies actually.
Oh,
Like
that's
she
good.
loves she especially loves Audrey Hepburn or like Natalie
Oh,
Wood.
yeah.
Like we watched The
Yep.
Reader Window and she fell in love
Hmm.
with,
Oh, I
just
love Rear Window. Rear Window's probably my favorite Hitchcock.
yeah, it's a
Mm,
masterpiece. And
mm,
it's Grace Kelly there, isn't
mm. Yes, Grace Kelly
yes.
and Jimmy
So
Stewart again.
yes, and she
Jimmy
fell in
Stewart,
love.
he's such a big crush of mine, even
Hmm.
though he's no longer with us. But in all his movies, he's definitely one of my big movie crushes.
And no, Jimmy Stewart, like I see it. And like my girlfriend, she's as straight as they come, but she was like,
Mm.
damn, Grace Kelly is beautiful. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Well, she became
absolutely.
like a literal princess after. So
Princess. Yes.
so
So
here's the thing.
exactly.
So Alice, what do you think, or what would you say is your favorite movie decade?
So this one genuinely, I know I've said it so many times already this podcast, but this is a genuinely interesting
Hmm.
question for me because I have always said the 2010s, right?
Mm,
Which seems a lot because I feel like a lot of people would say like 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. I've
yeah.
always been like the 2010s because one of my favorite genres is high concept sci-fi.
Okay.
And the 2010s is really when that started to like really work. Like,
Oh yes.
Arrival, Ex Machina, Annihilation, like all these beautiful, beautiful films that I
Hmm.
adore, as well as just in general. I mean, it's when the MCU started, all these things, or technically that started in 2009, but 2010s
Yeah.
is when it started, like Avengers, like, and it
Yes.
lifted off,
Yes.
But all of that. And so I've always said 2010s, but then I did my due diligence and I went to my letterbox and I checked my stats. And it tells me that apparently the 1990s is my favorite
Oh.
decade of all time. So apparently that's my favorite decade. 2010s was amongst the top three, but
Hmm.
the 90s was the top one. So take from that what you will. I do like a lot of movies from the 90s.
Hmm.
But I just found that very interesting.
What's fascinating, you mentioning letterbox stats, so I often check mine and other people's. And mine, like
Mm,
I find it fascinating that like as many, most of my movies watched are like 90s, 2000, 2010s
mm,
when you see
mm.
the graph. However, my best rated decades are 30s, 50s, and 40s. And I'm like,
Oh,
what?
yeah.
Because I've seen like little or like comparatively not as many as like 2000s or 2010s.
Yeah.
However, like I actually like most of them are straight up bangers. So like it's
Yeah.
like, and I'm not too shy to give it 5 out of 5, even if the film is not the masterpiece. I rate the movie based on what it's supposed to be rather than is it an Oscar-winning masterpiece or is it worth five? No,
Yeah,
fuck
yeah,
off.
yeah.
If it's a good movie, it's worth 5 stars. It's just
Yeah.
that's my strategy. So no,
Well, and that's
it's.
the thing. The difference between the two, it actually for me it went 90s, 2000s, 2010 in that order, which
Oh,
again, so the theoretically the decade I love the most is my third favorite. But
yeah.
the difference in rating is literally like in the 1990s, apparently on average, I gave 3.86 out of 5.
Mhm.
Then 2000s 3.83, and then 2010s is 3.82.
Wow.
So like there's not a huge variation in them, but look, the 90s did, looking at the stuff they have in front of me right
Yeah.
now, like, Silence of the Lambs, Jurassic Park, Truman Show, Clueless, Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Iron Giant, Lion King, like it was a good decade.
It's been a great decade. And
Yeah.
I've often said, 90s, I think it's a new 70s in a sense where I listen to DGA podcast and amongst many
Mm,
podcasts, I listen to DGAs, which is Directors Guild of America, and many of your high esteemed directors would often talk about how their favorite decade is the 70s, right? Because that's where
mm.
they grew up. Most filmmakers like, Coppola, Scorsese,
Yes.
Spielberg came to their power. And I have a
Yes.
feeling in about 10 years, 15 or so, we will see the same love and appreciation for the 90s because we
Mm.
will get new directors that grew up in
They
like
grew up
80s
on the
or
90s.
90s and grew up with those movies. And they
Mm.
revere those movies the same way like the 70s were a big thing for those people. So
Mm.
no, like 90s is a great one.
Mm.
Uh, do you have any hot takes when it comes to movies?
So this is what you were saying before,
Hmm.
about, Bradley Cooper trying too much and blah blah
Hmm.
blah. So people have already heard this plenty of times on other podcasts I've been on, but I hate La La Land. I cannot. That
Oh,
movie made me irrationally angry. Even more so because I really loved the movie for two-thirds, and then it's the ending. It's
okay.
one of my least favorite endings of all time. I walked out of that film angry. Like I was so upset. And since then, Damien Chazelle has pissed me off as a director. He honestly, to use modern terminology, he gives me the ick as a
Oh.
director. And it's because he seems so pretentious, not in his filmmaking
Hmm.
necessarily. It is in his filmmaking, but not to say like all the films he makes are pretentious films.
Hmm.
It's in the way in which his perspective that I'm viewing on screen doesn't work for me. So since
Oh.
La La Land, and that is me to say, I love Whiplash. I was on
Mhm.
board with Damien Chazelle with Whiplash. I was like,
Okay.
yes, love him. This is great. Then La La Land, I was on board. I should have loved that film. It has everything I normally love. And then the ending happened, and I thought that was the biggest slap in the face to anyone who went in thinking they were getting Singing in the Rain and all these classic,
Mm.
musicals, just to be shot in the face with reality. It's like, what's the point? The whole point of this freaking musical is that it's a beautiful romance. It's meant to be, a homage to these old musicals. And I understand that the ending's meant to technically homage one specific musical or whatever that did have a realistic ending.
Hmm.
But I don't care. That's not what I came here for. And anyway, like
Okay.
this could be a whole hour of its own, but I dislike it. And since then, and that was angry enough. And then all through like the speeches he was giving for La La Land and everything about it, just something about him gave me you know, when some people are just, you don't like them and you don't know why. And I think for me, it's because you could tell that he thought he deserved this. And not in the like, oh, I've worked really hard, I deserve this. In a, everyone was calling him a wonderkind and like, oh
Hmm.
my God, he's so, and he believed that with every aspect of his soul. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then First Man came out and it was fine, whatever. And
Hmm.
then Babylon came out. And if that movie did not cement my opinion of Damien Chazelle,
Hmm.
nothing ever would, because that was 3 of the most painful hours of my entire life. And it was a perfect representation of a man who thinks that he's every idea that comes out of his head is brilliance.
Hmm.
And he's like, oh, but technically the 20s were like this. Like, okay, but make a cohesive story with somewhat likable or interesting characters. Like,
Hmm.
oh, it just you can tell that he just, and again, I understand that this is entirely my perspective and it might be completely wrong because it is absolutely not based in any fact whatsoever, but is my opinion on what
Hmm.
I've seen. But something about him just angers me, and
Okay.
I can't stand the way he views the world,
Okay.
I think is my problem.
See, okay, that's an interesting thing. I don't think I ever actually heard those podcasts you're mentioning because I this is for me this is new,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not as high on La La. I need to rewatch it. I'm not as high on La La Land as many, but I still liked it. I
Mm.
loved The First Man because I read it slightly differently than many, I think, and many
Mm.
people, I think they kind of don't. There was this whole controversy how it's un-American, and I'm like, well, that was kind of their own purpose, and
Yeah.
also
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's don't focus on that. And I still haven't seen Babylon because three
Don't.
hours.
It's not. Just listen to the soundtrack. The soundtrack, the score's very, very good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Everything else about it is just, and it's like the last. I'm not gonna fully spoil it, but the ending is the
Hmm.
biggest wank fest I've ever seen in my entire life,
Hmm.
and it's so emotionally manipulative, and it's just,
I
I
just
could not stand
remember,
it.
I just remember
Yeah.
about that, the ending specifically. I remember
Mm.
Dicer tweeting about it. Like, this was a movie where I rewatched the last 20 minutes like four times. And I'm like, interesting. Okay. And again, it's on my watch list. There's actually streaming on a service I pay for. So it's on my watch
Mm.
list. And I want to watch
Look,
it.
watch it. You might really enjoy it.
Okay.
I also fully recognize that I am in the minority, especially with my specific annoyance towards Damien Chazelle, but
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
importantly, with my general opinion of La La Land. I
Hmm.
fully respect that a lot of people love that movie, and I will
Hmm.
never ever like be angry that somebody
Hmm.
loves a movie. Like, in fact, I'm really happy that somebody else can love something that I dislike. But when I dislike something, I dislike something. And I think I'm angry because I wanted to love this film. I
Yes.
really, really, and I did for so much of it. But I also, something I should mention, I'm a romantic. I always have been a romantic at heart. I love happy endings. I love romance. I think especially because of how much the world has gone to shit, it
Hmm.
really, for it to be a realistic, and that's not me to say, oh, if it's a bad ending or a sad ending, I don't like it. There are many movies, favorite movies of mine that have a bittersweet or sad ending,
Hmm.
but this one didn't earn it, and it
Okay.
angers me because of that. And so, yeah.
No, I really like your perspective, and this is why I started this podcast because there's
Yeah.
not one true perspective. This is your
No.
perspective, and I
Yeah.
actually like the way you explain your perspective. So when I'm gonna finally watch Babylon, I'm gonna be the back of my mind. I'm gonna think of Alice because, like,
Yeah.
now I have something else to link with that movie, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's see why Alice really doesn't like this movie. Let's go.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
All right. And okay, so any other movie hot takes, or do you
No,
want to move on?
that was pretty much it.
That's fair. That's fair. So let's go to the underrated part of this podcast, meaning Alice. Who would you say
Mhm.
is the most underrated actor we have right now?
So I none of the people I'm about to mention or things or besides one
Hmm.
is like unheard of, but I think that they're underrated due to specific reasons. So
Okay.
my actor is Daniel Radcliffe, which is interesting, I know, for me to say, given that he's literally Harry Potter. But
Yes.
it is because I think even though he's done a great job with his career since then in expanding his roles, there is
Hmm.
obviously a lot of people that still are like, oh, he's Harry Potter. And
Yes.
I don't feel he's been given his due specifically awards wise. Like, I think he is a really good actor. Like, he is really good at what he does. And that is even in the most recent thing I saw him in, which was the Weird Al movie, which was
Mhm.
excellent. But or every single movie of his that I've seen lately, I've really enjoyed. I mean, the speaking of Everything Everywhere All at Once, the movie prior to that, Swiss
This
Army
Army
Man, was
Man.
one of my first. The score was genius. The fact that it was literally Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe, like that's the score, is just
Hmm.
like I can't. But that movie right there, I remember seeing that and being like, this is gonna be something someday
Yeah.
because it is such a great film. And Daniel Radcliffe, he said yes to playing a farting corpse,
Yes.
like. And but even then, there are so many very small films that are really excellent that he's done that have been very expansive in his creative. Like besides the Weird Al films, there's Imperium is an excellent film where he plays an FBI agent who goes undercover with neo-Nazis. Horns, where he plays a guy who
Hmm.
starts growing horns randomly. Swiss Army Man I mentioned. Also there's the film where he plays that poet and the name escapes me right now, but the point is it's like he has been in so many different kinds of films. Also there's the show Miracle Workers, that sort of thing, where he is not afraid to
Yeah.
do something, but all of the roles he's done exceptionally. Like I said, he's a very 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 good actor. And I'm even going back in Harry Potter, no one else could have played Harry Potter, and he does it so well. Like
Hmm.
his acting in it is unbelievable. And the fact of the matter is, for example, he talks about how he can't even remember acting in Order of the Phoenix because he was, very child star, like in drugs, but you couldn't
Yeah.
tell because it's got one of the best performances because he's so talented. And I just think I would really love for him to start getting recognized more in these more traditional because he deserves it because he's been working so consistently across so many different and every project he does is interesting, but it's small, so it doesn't get huge notoriety.
Hmm.
I would love for that to happen more.
I, I've actually said this when I reviewed. Have you seen Guns Akimbo? His
Yes,
movie?
that was the other one I was trying to think of. Guns
Yeah.
Akimbo. Yes.
That's a great movie. That's a great little movie, and I feel like we always reward directors for being, having
Yes.
like a variety of like like Stanley Kubrick.
Mm.
Neither of his movies are like the other. Like like
Yeah.
he goes from horror to sci-fi to orgy movie,
Yeah.
and
I was like, how do you describe Eyes Wide Shut?
well, it's an orgy movie. It's a
Yeah.
it literally ends on we need to fuck.
Yeah.
No, but it's more obviously more about it, more things than that. But and like I honestly feel like Daniel Radcliffe has dealt with the massive success he's
Mm.
had with
Mm.
Harry Potter because obviously now he could retire. He could retire,
Mm.
never act
He
again.
could have
He's set.
retired after Harry Potter.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
set up for life, right? But instead of that, or I guarantee you, he must have had one too many offers from Marvel or from DC to
Mm.
join them. I'm no doubt
Mm.
they would have some, they wouldn't pull that Harry Potter,
Mm.
fame.
Mm. Mm.
However, he chooses to do stuff like Guns Akimbo, like Weird Al, like, all
Mm.
these tiny productions. And I feel like in 20 years or so, once he's maybe earned an Oscar,
Mm.
we'll take a look back at his career and be like, after Harry Potter, and be like, damn, that dude's been in a variety of very interesting tiny movies, and we didn't give him enough prop when he was
Mm.
making those, and just he
Mm.
deserves that. That's
One
a
of my
great.
favorite romantic comedies of all time it stars Daniel Radcliffe, Zoe Kazan, Adam Driver, and Mackenzie Davis, all before, besides Daniel Radcliffe, of course. But
Mhm.
this was back when nobody knew who Mackenzie Davis or
Yeah.
Adam Driver were.
Hmm.
Like, this was back when Adam Driver was in like Girls, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, this
Hmm.
was not the Adam Driver we know now. And it is honestly one of the most charming and genuinely, oh, it also has Rafe Spall in it too.
Oh.
Um, Genuinely funny romantic comedies I've ever seen in my life. The first time I ever saw it, I laughed so hard at one particular joke, I was crying, but it's also just really beautiful and lovely. I can highly recommend. It's called What If. I think in some other countries it's called Friends with Benefits. It's one of the two.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
adore this film. Not enough people have seen it. And that's again, literally, it was like in between like horns and Swiss Army Man. It's like
Yeah.
complete. I don't even know how his brain worked
Hmm.
going from film to film to film. But yes, I fully agree. I think it's one of the most interesting careers, which is why I'll watch everything Daniel Radcliffe. If it tells me if Daniel Radcliffe's in it, I'll watch it. I don't care what it is. I think it'll be
Same.
interesting.
No, same.
Mm.
And also, like, I was like, oh, what's the name of the comedy? What If? I haven't seen it yet,
Mm.
but I've seen it on his like
Yeah,
resume, and I'm like, that sounds fascinating. I'll
it's
check it out.
really good. It's
All
really good.
right.
I can recommend.
Nice. Okay. I'll. You think another movie when I finally watch it, I'll think of
Yeah.
Alice. Be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let's go, let's go. So, who would you say is the most underrated actress we have right now?
So this is an similarly, but I guess she has gotten Academy Award love, but
Hmm.
not wins. And I
Hmm.
think that it's like because of that, she's one of those actors that's like, oh, but she's really good, right?
Yeah.
And that's Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah, Saoirse.
Um, since she was a child, she has been exceptional.
Hmm.
She's also my age, which is very depressing. I'm like, look at what she's done. But
Yep.
like, again, she also has an exceptionally interesting career. Like, if you look at
Hmm.
her resume, like a lot of those films, I know that Foe apparently isn't very good, which is disappointing because I love high concept sci-fi. But
Hmm.
maybe I'll put it on late one night or something. But she, like, from Atonement, which is one of the most heartbreaking films you could ever see in your entire life,
Yep.
through to her career now, most recently in things like Little Women,
Hmm.
and even Lady Bird, or even like the Wes Anderson films, like she is so good at
Yes.
acting. Like I would have a couple of years back, I would have said Florence Pugh, but I'm very
Hmm.
glad to say that she has now become as famous as she deserves. If like she deserves to be even more so. She
Yes.
will get an Oscar one day, and she
Yes.
deserves to. I didn't say Florence Pugh because she's definitely not underrated.
Hmm.
And even though she's my favorite actress working, but Saoirse Ronan is very up there because I think, like I said, she gets nominated, but she's never in the top contention.
Hmm.
She's never fully in that conversation, and I think that's a shame because she is just exceptional in all of her work, and I really think she deserves an Oscar win, and I'm sure she's only young or whatever, so she has plenty of time, but
For her, it's a
I
question
think.
of when, not if. When she wins the
Exactly.
Oscar, or two.
Similar to Florence Pugh. It's like
Yes.
eventually they're both gonna get an Oscar, It's like I think, like how Jennifer Lawrence was like, she'll get an Oscar, and then she did.
Yes.
Um, and so I can't wait for that day because I think she deserves it because she's exceptional.
No, Saoirse Ronan, such a again. It's weird to say she's underrated because she
Yeah.
is like almost that kind of A-list level. I think she's
Yeah.
just on the edge of that, but
Well, it's because she also does a lot of indie films. Like she
yes.
doesn't do a lot of She's done like two blockbusters in her life, and both of them did not work out well. So
Mm. But she also was, I'm pretty sure before she was like 25 or 26, she's been nominated like six times or five times, something
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
And I'm like,
But she's
Jesus
never
fuck.
been the front runner. She's never even been close to being the front
Yeah,
runner, which I'm
yeah.
like, that's silly to me.
For me, like Saoirse, and I actually said the same point talking to somebody else. For me, and it's weird, so stick with me. Saoirse
Mm.
Ronan to me is like the female equivalent of Denzel Washington. Where if I see
Mm.
her name, right, the movie might not be my favorite movie, but she always delivers. The same as
Yeah,
Denzel. If I see Denzel Washington starring in this
yeah,
movie, the movie might not be 5 out of 5, but I know Denzel will fucking bring it because Denzel
yeah,
has his line, and he never dips below that quality line. So he
yeah.
even Equalizer 3 is just Denzel chilling in Italy, and it's look, sign me up because it's Denzel and he's
Yeah.
got that
It's like,
charisma
honestly,
he
it's
never
like Meryl
drops.
Streep too. It's
Yeah,
like, even if the movie's middling, Meryl will deliver.
and then she will get nominated for another Oscar, and she will
Yeah.
reach the 30 nominations.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So who would you say is your favorite, or sorry, not favorite, underrated director?
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've already talked about it at length, but I wanted to say Greta Gerwig because of the fact that she hasn't been nominated for Best Director yet, and I think that's a tragedy. And even though it's funny to say that she's underrated, but I think
Mhm.
that she clearly is in some way because she keeps missing a freaking director nomination. And I guarantee, I think Chelsea Handler said a joke or something. Some comedian said a joke about how Barbie was the top at one of these ceremonies, top film of the year. So you know what that means. The studios will be likely to take a chance on Greta Gerwig again.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's true. It's a
Hmm.
joke, but it's true.
Yeah.
But just to give a little bit of variety, I do also want to say Emerald Fennell because she's made
Mm.
2 films and both of them have been excellent. So again, in her case, she already has won an Oscar for writing, but
Yes.
again, directing wise, I think that it's not a case of if, it's a case of when, because Promising Young Woman and Saltburn are two of the
Hmm.
most interesting films I've seen in the last 5 years.
Hmm.
And I'm so excited to see what she does next. She has such watching Saltburn,
Hmm.
I think that the shocking nature of the scenes and the story of some of the elements of the story have taken over the cultural consciousness and also marred a little bit how well made the film is. Like I
Hmm.
watched it recently again to show my friends, and every shot was beautiful. The
Yeah.
cinematography in that film is astounding. Like it
Yes.
should have been nominated for cinematography, but I reckon a lot of Academy members would have seen that like bark drains scene and been like gross and then turned it off. But it's like the writing is impeccable, obviously the
Mhm.
performances, but the cinematography and the production design and the costume design, the thought behind it all is just crazy. Like Emerald
Mhm.
Fennel for sure.
No, Emerald Fennel, even though I wasn't as high on Saltburn as many, but I was
Mm.
very high on Me Promising a Woman. I need to
Mm.
rewatch it because I just had my
It's better
problems
on a
with it.
second watch, in my opinion.
Like I had my problems with the un like I loved it and then like the ending spilled it everything out and I was like I just
Mm.
wish you would leave it a bit ambiguous. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Just
Okay.
but even in my review I wrote, however, despite my problems, Emerald Fennell it will be one of those directors I'll always be, I'm rooting for now and she
Mm.
is on my
Mm-hmm.
list of like if she makes a movie, I'm there and I'm watching it because she has an eye for those shots.
Mm.
She knows how to tell a story. She knows how to
Mm-hmm.
craft story, and I'm there. I'm in her camp. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
great both Greta and Emerald, great picks. I know this one is difficult, but what
Mm-hmm.
would you say is the most underrated movie or your most underrated movie?
This isn't difficult. I am on a one-woman campaign.
Let's
Every
see.
podcast I ever go on, I will mention it in my first episode or whatever it is. So, this is a movie nobody's ever seen before.
Okay.
And I only happened to, well, some people have, but just to give you an idea, the box office was like $100,000, like nothing.
Nuts.
Um, and so it's rare that I find someone who's even heard of it, let alone seen it. The only reason I've seen it is because in university, I had this thing where I would pick an actor and then I watch every single thing in their repertoire. So
Mm.
I had that. I did it with Jake Gyllenhaal, I did it with Anne Hathaway, and I did it with Ewan McGregor and
Ah,
Eva Green, and they're both in this film. So this film is called Perfect Sense.
I've
It's
seen
from
it.
2011. Oh my God.
It's a
Okay,
great
good.
one.
It is one of my favorite films. On my letterbox, it's in my top 4. It is honestly one of my favorite films of all time. And yeah, nobody, it's a miracle you have. Like, I'm really glad you have because so it stars Ewan McGregor and Eva Green, and it's directed by David Mackenzie.
Hmm.
For people would know from Hell or High Water, for example.
Yeah.
And it is everything I love in a movie. It is a
Hmm.
great surface story and then a great background high concept sci-fi story and then also a great thematic story. Like it's
Yes.
working on so many different levels. And like for anyone listening who doesn't know about it, basically it follows Eva Green and Ewan McGregor who meet and fall in love, or you start to see them meet and then start to fall in love. She's an epidemiologist, he's a chef. um Pretty standard love story.
Yes.
However, it is set on the background of ironically quite timely now pandemic or where the world starts losing its senses one at a time. So, for
Hmm.
example, the first sense that everybody loses is their sense of smell.
Yep.
But before each sense is lost, each person undergoes a deep emotional wave. So for example, right before people lose their sense of smell, they have this intense moment of feeling every piece of sadness and grief, everyone they've ever hurt, every time they've ever been hurt, it all comes flooding back to them. They have a big cry. The next morning they wake up, they can't smell. Similarly, when you lose your sense of taste, you suddenly get hit with this wave of hunger and you start eating everything around you. And I mean, it's a bit grotesque because there's,
Yeah.
the bit in the fish market and everyone's in a fish market and then people just start grabbing it and eating, and people are eating like lipstick and flowers and whatever they can if it's not edible, and then suddenly you can't taste anymore. And you're
Mm.
just following, it's centered on this couple and you're just following them as you obviously like, it's a little bit of like, oh, what are we going to do? But not really. It's more about like, what does the world do when something happens and you can't fix it? And you just have to, and like, how does humanity deal with what what is unfixable? How does humanity deal with tragedy and keep picking itself back up? And I love the message of this movie. I love the way it shows the strength and the goodness and the like badness as well of humanity and how
Hmm.
we would react, and the way in which it tells the story of each sense being lost. And it's just such a beautiful movie. It's a high concept sci-fi in that way, and I love it so much. It's also only like 80 something minutes,
Yes,
so
it's short.
very quick watch. Can
Hmm.
like I strongly recommend, and more people should see this movie.
Same, same, same. Like I've seen it once because I've been
Mm.
Ewan McGregor has been my fa one of the favorite actors of mine
Mm.
for a long time, long
Yeah,
time. Like Moulin Rouge, Star
me
Wars, and
too.
then it just yeah. And look, I'm just a guy, so if you put Eva Green in your movie, you have my attention. Like, and on top
Yeah,
of being just like out of this world gorgeous, she's an actually very talented actress. She
she
is.
is.
She is so criminally underappreciated. Like it's
Actually, she would have been
insane.
a great choice for underrated actress as
Yes.
well,
No,
because she
yeah.
also has one of the most interesting resumes I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm. So like, so those two paired up when I saw that movie exist, I was like, well, let me check it out. And I was like, wow, that was a
Yeah.
movie. I loved it. Like
Yeah.
great fit. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy about this. I'm so happy. So
Thank you.
last one would be what's your favorite or underrated TV show?
Okay, so I've got two choices. One
Okay.
is still running and the other one's finished. Which one would you
I'll give you both. Look, it's all about you,
Okay.
so you can have both.
Well, let's go. Well, I'll be really quick on the one that's finished.
Okay.
It's called Toast of London. It's a
Hmm.
comedy show, and everybody now knows Matt Berry because of What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
This is the Matt Berry show. So it's a bit of
Ah.
an absurdist, like more in, but it's in line with like your Black Books or
Mhm.
your like IT Crowd, but it's more absurdist kind of in humor. And it stars so many people. It's absolutely crazy.
Okay.
But it's basically Matt Berry plays an actor in London, who's a stage actor, and he's just trying to like work and go about his day, but obviously silly things always keep happening around him. Like, for example, in the first season he's in the worst play of all time and everyone always like is offended by his presence. They're like, how dare you be in that play, blah blah blah. And then there's a whole episode where he gives away the ending to a play where the ending had been kept secret for 60 years. And it's a bit of a joke on, there's the famous play The Mouse Trap.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So he's in The Moose Trap, and it's like in a
Mm.
radio interview he gives away who did it, and then and then it's like the entire episode is all the people being like, I can't believe you get this has been a secret held for 65 years. And
Yeah.
then it's such a funny show. It's such a funny absurdist British show. I can, if especially if you're enjoying What We Do in the Shadows, and especially if you're enjoying Matt Berry's performance, it is so good. I really recommend. So he's done I think there's 3 seasons of Toast of London,
Mhm.
and then there's Toast of Tinseltown, which is one season where he goes to LA to be in a
Mm.
Star Wars movie, which is very funny because it was right before he was in Andor
Yeah.
as the like robot. Because in the show he's like, everyone's like, "Oh, what are you doing in LA?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be in a Star Wars movie." And everyone's like, "Yeah, sure." And that's like the joke the entire movie is, the
Mhm.
entire show is that nobody believes him. And
Yeah.
anyway, it's a very 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 funny couple of
Okay.
shows. I strongly recommend. Like in Toast of London, that John Hamm makes a like cameo, fun guest appearance, and like
Mhm.
all these actors that you would recognize from other British shows and stuff. Do you know Baldur's Gate 3 at all, the video game?
I do know of it, but I'm not a gamer anymore, so I've never played it, but I
Okay.
know of it,
One of
yes.
the voice actors who plays Gale is also in the show,
I
in
see.
one of the best roles of one of the best parts of the show. So
Okay.
yeah, can recommend. And then another British show that I recommend that's underrated that's currently still running. I think there's two more seasons left
Hmm.
to come, which is
Hmm.
Slow Horses.
Ah.
I think it's under because nobody ever talks about it. I have no one to talk to about this show, and it
Mhm.
is like, and I also consider myself in the it's underrated because every time a season comes out, I watch it, I like love it, I consume it, it's amazing, and then the break will happen, and then I'll forget about it until it comes back,
Yeah.
and I'll be like, okay, all right, let's watch the first episode of the new season. It's amazing. It's
Mm.
so well done. Gary Oldman is so good. Everyone in that cast is so good. And it's, I love it because it's like, this is what being a spy would be like. You know, it's
Mhm.
not like a Mission Impossible or a James Bond or anything like that. Like it's what, it's just showing what's, but obviously it's also tense and it's a really cool mystery every season. And
Mhm.
it's just, it's so well made and more people should watch it because it's excellent.
I've never heard of the Toast of London, to be honest. So
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely on my like. I love breadcrumbs. I love Black
Mm.
Books. I love Red
Yeah.
Dwarf. I love all of these. So that's
Oh, then
definitely
you'll
on
love
my
this.
list.
You'll love
Yeah.
this. This is like the one that you haven't seen. It's good.
And Slow Horses I've heard of, but I think
Mm.
it's the Apple TV syndrome, or I like to call it Apple TV syndrome, because it doesn't still seem to be as big, even though they are producing quite a lot of quality stuff now. Where
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling had this been on Amazon Prime or even Netflix, it would have been all over, like the all over pop culture, like
Yeah.
because I've heard so many great things about like Shrinking, Slow Horses, all the other Apple TV shows, but from only specific people. And then
Mm.
nobody else talks about them because it seems like nobody else has Apple TV. So it's or
Yeah.
everybody always has it for like those like 2 or 3 months for free. They catch up
Yeah.
on everything and they just cancel. So
Yeah.
it's
Which is a shame because I also was one of those people. I wasn't like, I definitely fell for the, oh, have it for free for a year with your new
mm,
Apple purchase. And then I
mm,
was like, oh, cancel it. And then it's honestly, it's probably producing the best content out of any streaming service right now. Like I think every show, maybe minus one or two, but
mm,
even if it's not amazing, they've all been excellent shows, like, or very good at least, like very good to excellent shows. And,
mm, mm.
you know, everything from like Silo to Ted Lasso to Slow Horses, like it's getting gaining an amazing repertoire, and it's one of the only if is it the only streaming service to have won a Best Picture, like
Yes,
you
Coda.
know,
Well,
so
if you
they're
count
doing pretty
Roma,
well.
if you count
No,
Roma,
that one Best International. That
okay,
one's
okay,
best
yeah,
in
yeah,
Best
yeah.
Foreign Language rather,
Yes,
Best Foreign
yes,
Language. So that
yeah.
doesn't count. Like this one won the big prize.
No, no, no. Yeah, it does. It did. And they are wanting to, they've been wanting to, repeat it with Napoleon, which obviously didn't do
Didn't
as
work. But
well.
Killers of the Flower Moon will probably win some.
No,
Or
yeah,
at
I think
least
so.
maybe, I mean, now it's, I think, between Emma Stone as well with Best
Yes.
Actress,
And Lily
but it
Gladstone.
could, yeah,
Yeah.
and Lily Gladstone, it's going to be one of those. I mean, Lily Gladstone was the favorite, but then I think Poor Things is, it's
Yes.
so good. And she's so good that, like, it's going to be a bit of a competition and it might win one or two others.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to look at what else it's nominated for. It is a competitive year, though, to be
It
fair.
is very stacked here. So,
Mm.
like,
Oh no, that's Oppenheimer's. No, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
I think like I cannot decide between Emma Stone and Lily Gladstone because yeah,
Mm.
same until I watched Poor Things. I was like, yeah, this is a Lily Gladstone's here. And then I watched Emma Stone. I'm like, damn, she's
Yeah.
kind of fucking
That's such a
phenomenal
good
in this.
movie. That's
And
such a
I'm
good
like,
movie.
so like either way, no matter who wins, I'll be happy, but I'll also be sad for the other one because like
Mm.
just
Yeah. Well, especially because like it's difficult because Lily Gladstone's win would also be historic,
yes,
literally, right?
yes, yes.
It would be a huge moment
Hmm.
historically, but I can't deny Emma Stone's performance, which like I didn't enjoy her win for La La Land. So
Mm.
this would be a win that I was actually happy with for her, which is annoying because I really, really love Emma Stone. Like I adore
Hmm.
her. I think she's one of the greatest actresses working right now.
Oh yes.
So I want her to have a win that I agree with. But like, but I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet, so I
It's a
I
great
don't
movie.
I have heard obviously that it's I mean it's just every time I go to sit down and watch it, I'm like
I
it's
know.
3.5 hours. Like that's
I know.
honestly I would have seen it by now even if it had only been 3 hours. But I will get to it obviously before
No,
the Oscars. And so I haven't seen Lily Gladstone yet, but from everything I've heard is that she's fantastic.
she
So
is. She.
we'll see. We'll see. If the Oscars goes based on tradition, it'll be Lily Gladstone
Yes.
because they like to pat themselves on the back that way.
Look what we did. Look
But
what we did.
exactly, which again does not, in my eyes, mean that she's not deserving, especially because she is
Mhm.
the favorite anyways this
Yeah.
year. But I will confirm my opinion once I've actually
Mhm.
seen the movie.
That's fair. And that's all I can ask for. So
Mhm.
I've been asking you a lot of questions
Mm.
for over 3 hours now,
Yeah.
and I think it's time to flip the table. And do you have any question or questions for me?
Yes, I do. Now, I went on a little whole spiel about La La Land.
Oh shit.
I'm gonna ask you this. I mean, if you need a second to think about it, it's okay. But
Yeah.
if you could change the ending of any movie, which would it
Ooh.
be and how would you change it?
Since we've already mentioned it, it's in quite a kind of cheat, but I honestly think Saltburn,
Mm,
if that was my only issue with the movie, had it stayed a bit more ambiguous with, everything without going into spoilers, had it not
mm,
spilled all the beans where we as the audience, we know now, if you go to rewatch it, we know exactly what happens. There's no question about anything. I think I would have liked it more. I understand why
mm,
she did it, or why Emerald felt the need to do that. I kind of get it. But also, I am one of those where if you give me just enough hints, if you give me the path, I'll follow you. You know,
mm.
there's a difference. Or Leave the World Behind. It's not a great movie, but that's an ending that's like, I don't know if you've seen it.
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'll just say I could see this ending coming a mile away. I was like, this is
Yeah,
really one of those movies, isn't it? And it's not earned whatsoever. I
yeah.
think that maybe you'll be pissed off because I was. I was like, so I said two
That's why I
hours and
haven't
20
watched it yet
minutes.
because I've heard not amazing things about it.
And I'm like higher than most people on this
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
because I
yeah.
actually enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, like if I'm gonna spend 2 hours, 20 minutes with you movie, fucking,
Mm,
you need to earn that ending. And he didn't. So
yep,
uh yeah, I think like a recent memory
fair
of
enough.
Solburn would be the one that sticks out the most. And even again, I still like that movie very much.
Mm, there you
Mm-hmm.
go. Final question for you.
All right.
If you could resurrect one actor or director, who would it be?
Oh. So they would be back with
Mm.
everything they
They would be able to
remember.
work.
They would
Sorry?
or wouldn't? They wouldn't or
Yeah,
wouldn't?
yeah. Just like they're literally at the point they died or whatever. But like assuming, if they died of old age, they
Mhm.
resurrected at an early enough age, they can continue working.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I have two answers. So director,
Hmm.
I gotta go with Stanley Kubrick. I gotta go.
Mm.
I would love to see what
He would
because
probably have to
he.
change his methods a little bit so they don't cause psychological trauma.
Yes, yes, yes. Like all the abuse aside for a second, he
Yeah.
shouldn't. But all the abuse aside, I would love to see because he died just as the CGI became what it
Mm.
is now, right?
Mm.
Because obviously, like AI, big example, Spielberg's film was originally Kubrick's film, and I would love to see what sci-fi like if you to give me or if I brought him back just for one movie. I would love to see what a sci-fi movie with current CGI look like in a hands of Stanley Kubrick. I
Mm.
would love to because I feel like we would tap into something
Yeah, it would be
very few
interesting.
people could, maybe like Denis Villeneuve, like tap with
I was
something
about to say, I think
Arrival.
Denis Villeneuve is probably the closest to the
Yeah,
living
no, like Arrival, just a masterpiece on sci-fi and how to do
Dune.
sci-fi. Dune, yeah,
Mm.
Dune, like unfilmable Dune has either has been filmed. And for an actor, I'm gonna go with an actress because I love and adore her, and I would love to see one more performance, and it'll be Audrey Hepburn
Oh, yeah.
because
Oh,
to me, like she is, first of all, she has this look about it that almost screams royalty, right?
mm.
She looks regal. But and many people therefore kind of forget she was a great actress, in a
Mm,
time where not that wasn't the case. And yes, if you look at the back some of her performances now, you'll be like, really this? But you need to put it in perspective, in historical context, where 50s and 60s were different. The acting were much different than what we do
mm,
now. So I would love to, like, if we could bring Audrey in her kind of prime back and give me like either like a romantic movie or a drama with her in it, I would be all over it because like she is to me one of those proper Hollywood like royalties.
mm. Yeah, that's a great answer.
Oh, thank you. So, Alice, it's been a blast talking to you. Like, honestly, I do not regret a single minute, and it's been a lot of minutes. So, like, I'm so
Yep.
happy. No, but this is exactly what I had in mind when I invited you over because I was like, this is gonna be a long one, but I think it's gonna be a blast, and it was. So, if like me, people want to follow you, where would they go?
It has been an absolute blast. Thank you for having me on, even though
Anytime.
I know you had to get up early, so I really appreciate
It's
it.
fine.
For me, it's easy. It's a Saturday night. So, so you can find me on Letterboxd and Instagram at Ali G Mick, ALIGMICH. And then like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I'm also a writer for siftpop.com.
Mhm.
And so you can find me. My most recent review was for the movie musical Mean Girls, because it is a
Yes.
musical, even though the advertising pretended it wasn't. Actually, that would be another one of my, I guess it's not a hot take, but really quick, stop
Yeah,
advertising your musicals not as musicals. That's so stupid.
it is.
Ah,
It is.
anyway. Um, and then so that was my last one, and my next one will be my next in the series, in my monthly series of One Stop Pop, where basically I take whatever was most popular in the previous month and recommend other forms of media based on it. The last one I did was a double hitter between I can't even remember right now, but it was like it was a double hitter between two different movies. And I will quickly find them while we wrap up as well, so I can mention.
Hmm.
Here we go. It was The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and Willy Wonka, and well, Wonka rather. So it was a
Yeah.
double hitter because December's obviously a bit of a busy month, so we did
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
twice. And so I'll be doing my next one of those.
Nice. And I strongly encourage everybody to follow Alice because she's absolute delight to follow. And yeah, she loves
Thank you.
movies and it shows every single time you read or listen to her, it shows. And if
Thank
people
you.
for whatever reason want to follow me, I'm on Letterboxd in Movies Lost or on my blog lostinmovies.co.uk where I write a review twice a week. But as always, this podcast is part of SPDM Crew Podcast Media. Also, big shout out to HiFlyer Creative for designing my logo. To see what else they have happening, visit hiflyercreative.com. So until next time, bye bye!